Chapter 736. This beauty salon was high-end, and the decorations were even more luxurious. All the equipment and cosmetics used inside were more expensive than gold. It wasn't something that could be bought with hundreds of thousands or even millions of yuan. Otherwise, Shuntong would have already bought the neighboring salon. The air in Jingdu was filled with the smell of money. Shuntong's beauty salon was very different from others. Although the investment was ridiculously high, the income was also very considerable. Some of the women here only needed a few hundred yuan for one session, while others needed thousands or even tens of thousands of yuan. There were even some who had to take care of every pore from head to toe. When Jing Yunzhao said that he wanted to invest, Shuntong was dumbfounded. She was indeed short of money. When she bought these two houses, she spent a lot of money and even owed the bank some money. However, after all, it wasn't easy to buy the house next door. It was better than letting others snatch it away. Even if she couldn't use it for the time being, it was still good to rent it to others in the future. However, she didn't expect Jing Yunzhao to say that he wanted to invest. If it was true, she would be more than happy to. But, Jing Yunzhao, I know. I said that you're a country bumpkin, so you want to slap my face. However, I think you're using the wrong method. Do you think I'll believe you when you say that you want to invest? People care about their face, and trees care about their bark. I'm really shocked that you would say such things for your own face. Zhou Meijun laughed. In her heart, she was simply disgusted. He actually said that he wanted to invest? Did he know how much it would cost? Aunt Tong? Jing Yunzhao ignored Zhou Meijun and stared at Shen Tong. When she first arrived, she noticed the house next door. When she came in, she also heard the waiter mention it in a low voice. Otherwise, she wouldn't have spoken so rashly. As for Shuntong's character, Jing Yunzhao wasn't worried because he could tell from Hua Tianqian's reaction. Hua Tianqian had always been arrogant, but her eyesight was excellent. If there was a problem with Shan Tong's character, with Hua Tianqian's intelligence, it was impossible for her not to notice it. Moreover, even if Shun Tong's character was ordinary, it wouldn't be a problem. Since it was an investment, there would be no shortage of contracts. It was only related to benefits, not personal matters. If there's an investment, of course, I will consider it. Shin Tong was a little confused. She rubbed her head and even felt that she might be old and couldn't keep up with this little girl's thoughts. That's good. Jing Yunzhao pursed her lips and smiled. After speaking, she took out a stack of blank checks from her bag and started writing. After writing, she stuffed it into Shun Tong's hand. 10 million. If it's not enough, I will add more. In the future, I will trouble Aunt Tong to take care of me. Of course, from today onwards, this mother and daughter pair will be banned from entering the house. Is that okay? This check belonged to Yuling Wines. It was stamped with Yuling Wines and Pak Yuan seal, so there was no problem. She gave this check to Shin Tong in front of so many people, so she wasn't worried that she would go back on her word. Jing Yunzhao moved quickly and glanced at Zhou Meijun faintly. Miss Zhou, the term country bumpkin is not differentiated by region, but by brain. Miss Zhou, I'm afraid your brain is filled with idiots. Even if you are born rich, your standards are still so low that it's disgusting. After speaking, she said, Why? Do you still want to verify whether this check is real or fake? There's a bank nearby. I don't mind. When she was just reborn, she was short of money, but now she was rich. Chapter 737. After Yuling Wine Company turned the tables in the battle with Zhuohaiyang, their sales this year would definitely exceed 10 billion. Yuling Tea House's sales were a little less, but now the tea leaves were selling very well, and the income was not low. Other than that, there was also Yu Tianxian in the medicinal herbs business from the Medicine Association. In addition, during the 2 years she was in Huaning County, the patients that Old Man Su introduced to her earned her a lot of private money. Comparing money? She wasn't afraid of that. After Jing Yunzhao finished speaking, the surroundings were silent. Even Hua Tianxian and Yao Baobao were stunned and couldn't react. Zhou Meijun's eyes flashed with deep shock, but she still didn't want to believe it. She said, Do you think I'll believe a random check is real? Jing Yunzhao, didn't you say we can go to the bank to verify it? Okay, then go. It's illegal to write a fake check. Don't blame me for not reminding you. She looked stubborn, but she felt a little guilty. Jing Yunjiao didn't look like he was lying. It seemed like he really could take out the money. 10 million was enough to open a few small to medium-sized beauty salons. This amount of money was not small even in the capital where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. Tao Gu clearly told her that Jing Yunjiao was born in a small county and that she was an orphan. If that was true, how could Jing Yunjiao take out so much money? The Zhou family was not bad. Her stepfather's family was rich compared to ordinary people, but her stepfather was a person who knew how to live. He usually liked to collect paintings and antiques, so he didn't give her a lot of pocket money. Even her mother didn't have much money. It was impossible for her to take out 10 million so casually. Jing Yunjiao snorted softly, his eyes firm. Shintong saw that and knew that Jing Yunjiao wasn't joking. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but after thinking about it, she accepted it and quickly prepared the contract. She had thought about finding someone to invest in before, so the contract was already prepared. Shintong directly invited Jing Yunjiao and the others into a private room to talk. Jing Yunjiao carefully read through the contract, pointed out a few issues, and after making some adjustments, she happily signed it. Everyone was unable to react in time to this situation. If this was an act, then this act was a little too realistic, especially when Jing Yunjiao was frowning as she read the contract carefully. She didn't look like a little girl who didn't know anything at all, but more like a successful person with a bold spirit. The problems she pointed out were also very sharp, making Shintong couldn't help but be even more serious when dealing with them. Naturally, Zhou Meijun and her son still didn't believe it. They sneered as if they were sure that the check was fake. After negotiating the contract, Zhou Meijun and her son proudly followed Shintong and the others to a nearby bank. The moment they stepped into the bank, even Shintong herself was a little nervous. Although she felt that Jing Yunjiao wouldn't tell such a big lie, Zhou Meijun's serious look made it seem like she was really playing along with Jing Yunjiao. "Hello, there is no problem with this check. Would you like to cash it now?" The staff at the counter asked politely. Hearing this, Zhou Meijun was dumbfounded. Hua Tianxian and the others breathed a sigh of relief. "That's impossible. Let's see. How can it be real?" Zhou Meijun was halfway through her sentence when Hua Tianxian proudly pulled her to the side. "All right, stop acting like a clown. I already said that the check is real. There should be a limit to your nonsense, right?" Chapter 738. Hua Tianxian was in a good mood when she saw Zhou Meijun's ugly expression, as if she had eaten a dead fly. "That's right. From now on, don't wander around Jing's territory. Otherwise, I'll ask the security to throw you out immediately." Baby Yao was also amused. Zhou Meijun's brain couldn't handle it. Jing Yunjiao took out 10 million yuan at once. Could she be the daughter of a wealthy family? She thought that she could at least beat her in terms of family background, but in the end, she couldn't even keep that. "Where did you get the money?" "Tao Gu said that you're being kept by someone." "Zhou Meijun, are you forcing me to be rough with you?" Jing Yunjiao snorted coldly. After she finished speaking, she let out a breath. Seeing that Zhou Meijun still hadn't reacted, she walked over. Her gaze landed on the wooden bracelet on Mrs. Zhou's wrist and lightly smiled. "How strange, Mrs. Zhou likes to wear dead man heavy?" Mrs. Zhou raised her eyebrows. "What do you mean by dead or alive?" "It's unlucky." "Isn't it? How unlucky?" "Mrs. Zhou, don't tell me you think you're wearing a bracelet made of agarwood?" Jing Yunjiao mocked. Mrs. Zhou was wearing a dark flower cheongsam. The style was very different from Shantong's. It looked more ancient. The wooden bracelet on her hand was darker in color and emitted a faint fragrance. At first glance, it did look like a special grade of agarwood. However, although Jing Yunjiao didn't know much about things like literature, she knew a lot about medicinal herbs. The fragrance of agarwood could open the apertures, smooth the meridians, and heal the body. She had long been engraved in her mind and could distinguish even the slightest difference. Moreover, she had seen various grades of agarwood at Old Man Su's place. She could distinguish between the real and the fake. Even if she was far away, she could feel it. "What do you mean by that?" Mrs. Zhou's eyes were as sharp as swords. "Don't you understand what I mean? Just now, you said that you can't stay in the same place with a country bumpkin like me. In fact, you and your son are the country bumpkins, right? He doesn't have any knowledge at all. He's showing off his fake agarwood everywhere. He's really thick-skinned, Jing Yunjiao said again. Hua Tianxian and the others looked at Mrs. Zhou's wrist. The color of the wooden skewer was rather dark, and it did indeed have a delicate fragrance. There seemed to be a layer of grease on the outside of the wooden skewer, making it stand out from the rest. Everyone knew that agarwood contained oil, so there should be no mistake. Jing Yunjiao didn't finish his sentence. He only looked at the mother and daughter with disdain. Then, he got up and left the bank with Hua Tianxian and the others. However, just as they stepped out of the bank, the mother and daughter of the Zhou family were not satisfied. Saying that her bracelet was fake in front of so many people, wasn't it the same as saying that she, Mrs. Zhou, was no different from an imposter? Although the Zhou family wasn't a famous family, they didn't need her to wear fake agarwood. Jing Yunjiao's words made them lose face. Moreover, Mrs. Zhou had spent money to buy this wooden skewer for her own brother. She had never liked gold and jade. She felt that it was too tacky, so she thought of using a wooden skewer. It also had a fragrance and looked elegant. Jing Yunjiao, you better make yourself clear. The mother and daughter immediately blocked Jing Yunjiao's path. Jing Yunjiao smiled lightly. This is the first time I've seen someone looking for trouble. Do you really want to hear what I have to say? Don't try to scare me. Do you know how much I spent on this bracelet? How dare you say it's fake? Mrs. Zhou said angrily. Money has nothing to do with authenticity. Jing Yunjiao mocked and continued, if you don't believe me, you can take the bracelet off and burn it. See if it smells really bad. Chapter 739. The so-called agarwood bracelet could be divided into dead and living ones. After the agarwood tree died, it was buried in soil and flooded with water. After hundreds of years of corrosion, the remaining part was called agarwood, which was also known as dead agarwood. This type of agarwood was extremely rare and expensive. As for living agarwood, it was a bracelet made directly from the agarwood tree. Regardless of whether it was dead or living, it would definitely be fragrant after being smoked. However, the bracelet in Mrs. Zhou's hand, although there was only one additional word, was very different. There is a type of tree that grows along the border of China. The tree species is the same as agarwood, but the only difference is that agarwood slowly forms oil due to the destructive conditions of the outside world, while the dead agarwood forms oil naturally during its growth period. Of course, the dead agarwood also has a fragrance. The smell and appearance are the same as agarwood, but a fake is a fake. After the dead agarwood is burned, the difference will immediately become apparent, just like the smell of burning plastic, and the smoke stains will be ink black. Jing Yunjiao said faintly, his tone clear and clear. As he spoke, his entire body shone brightly. Halfway through, he paused and looked at her with a scrutinizing expression. With a smile, he said, but Mrs. Zhou, I see that you don't seem to care about the authenticity of the bracelet. No one will do anything to you even if you bring the dead agarwood around. Moreover, you spent a lot of money to buy it, so how could you bear to burn it? So, I'm just saying, whether you listen to me or not has nothing to do with me, Jing Yunjiao said deliberately. Jing Yunjiao was not lying. Nothing was absolute. Although the smell was the same, it still depended on the person who smelled it. If she could not even tell the difference between the dead agarwood and the agarwood, Old Man Su would probably die of anger. However, after Jing Yunjiao said that, regardless of what Mrs. Zhou said, Hua Tianxian and the others could only treat it as a fake. Even if Jing Yunjiao's words were vague and unsubstantiated and sounded like a bluff, it was a pleasure for them to provoke someone they hated. Mrs. Zhou's face was frighteningly cold. The bracelet cost hundreds of thousands, which was not a small amount. She had to please her husband for an entire day before he agreed to give her the money. Now, she was wearing a bracelet that was worth hundreds of thousands, but someone said that it was fake. Shintong was also here. If she were to spread the news, she believed that it wouldn't take long for everyone in the circle to know that she had brought a fake. Even if it was real, no one would believe her. You're talking nonsense. Jing Yunjiao, are you saying that my bracelet is fake? Okay, I'll burn this bracelet now. If it's real, what will you do? Mrs. Zhou roared. How am I? What a joke. What does your bracelet have to do with me? Jing Yunjiao suddenly became shameless. It was just a casual remark. Did he have to take it seriously? Wasn't Zhou Meijun the same? Since that was the case, why did she have to pay the price for these few words of truth? When Jing Yunjiao said this, Mrs. Zhou felt extremely stifled. How could there be such an annoying girl? Sure enough, birds of a feather flocked together. None of Ren Xingyue's friends were good people. Shower, is what you said true? Hua Tianxian couldn't help but ask. Of course it's true. Jing Yunjiao smiled gently. When Hua Tianxian heard this, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She looked at the mother and daughter of the Zhou family and said, "How about this? You burn this bracelet. If it doesn't smell like what Jing Yunjiao said, I'll pay for it. But if it's really like what she said, you can pay 100,000. How about that? Do you want to bet?" Ever since she came back from the military base, she had fallen in love with this kind of gambling drama. Especially when it involved Jing Yunjiao, she would definitely win. Chapter 740. Mrs. Zhou looked hesitant, but she was unwilling to refuse. It wasn't that she couldn't afford 100,000 yuan. Although her husband didn't approve of her spending a few 100,000 yuan on the bracelet, he still gave her a lot of money every month. Most importantly, she could prove that her bracelet was real and Jing Yunjiao and the others wouldn't have anything to say. Otherwise, how could she go out and socialize in the future? Besides, if the bracelet was burned, the little girl would pay for it. In front of so many people, she couldn't go back on her word. She had asked her own brother to buy it, so how could it be fake? Mrs. Zhou sneered, "Okay, Jing Yunjiao, you'll know that you should keep a low profile. Don't talk nonsense all the time." Jing Yunjiao pursed her lips and smiled, her expression cold and arrogant. Mrs. Zhou immediately took out the bracelet, but after all, they were outside the bank. There were too many people and it didn't look good, so she went back to the beauty salon to sit down and talk. One or cut off a piece and burn it. There's no need to waste it. Jing Yunjiao saw Mrs. Zhou put the whole bracelet on a plate and said. It wasn't that she was thinking for Mrs. Zhou, but she clearly knew that the mother and daughter of the Zhou family were very calculative. After they verified that the agarwood was fake, the ones left behind would definitely make Mrs. Zhou furious. What was the point of burning them all? As soon as she said that, Zhou Meijun immediately pulled off a piece. What a joke. This thing was worth a lot of money. Wouldn't it be a pity to burn it all for no reason? Jing Yunjiao's eyes were smiling as she casually sat on the sofa. After a while, the waiter came back with a fire source. Under everyone's gaze, she reached out to the agarwood. Mrs. Zhou and her daughter's eyes were wide open. Their expressions were serious, but even so, there was still a lot of confidence in their eyes. The agarwood contained oil, so it was easy to ignite. After a while, there was a crackling sound and a flame appeared. At the same time, the air was instantly filled with a foul smell. The smell was so pungent that everyone covered their mouths and noses. Although agarwood was not commonly seen, everyone knew the characteristics of agarwood. When burned, it would definitely not emit such a horrible and disgusting smell. Hua Tianxian narrowed her eyes and smiled. 100,000 yuan was not much to her, but it was a good sign. Moreover, she could see the mother and daughter's exasperated expressions. How funny was that? Bang! Mrs. Zhou slammed her hand on the table. That's impossible. My brother bought it for me. It can't be fake. Did you put something dirty in here? Her brother wouldn't lie to her, right? Something worth hundreds of thousands. Haha, you still have so many beads left in your hands. If you don't believe me, you can burn them one by one. Jing Yunjiao laughed coldly. Her gaze landed on Mrs. Zhou's shocked and somewhat angry expression, and she purposely said, "So it turns out that the item was personally bought by your younger brother. As the saying goes, it's hard to guard against thieves day and night. Looks like Mrs. Zhou needs to discipline the people around you. Otherwise, even if you can blame the fake item on your younger brother this time, what about the next time? I don't know if your brother is willing to bear this dirty water." In the beginning, Mrs. Zhou was very sure that what she said was true. The item should have been given by someone she trusted the most. However, Jing Yunjiao's words were purposely said to make Mrs. Zhou look like an evil older sister who lost a bet and acted shamelessly. She couldn't voice out her grievances. When she went back, she would definitely be at odds with her brother. This Mrs. Zhou was so annoying. How could she be satisfied if she didn't cause trouble for her? Chapter 741. Mrs. Zhou's face was full of unwillingness. She took out 2 beads in succession and tested them again. However, it turned out that they were still stinky. Her face was livid with anger. At this moment, just as Jing Yunjiao thought, Mrs. Zhou resented her own brother in her heart. At that time, she thought that gold and jade were too vulgar. It was her brother who told her that the agarwood bracelet was good and that he could buy it from someone else for her. At that time, her brother was sincere and even said that many people wanted this bracelet and he had a good relationship with the seller, so he could buy it for her. At that time, she thought that her brother cared about her sister, but she didn't expect that he would give her a fake bracelet. This thing was called dead man heavy. Just hearing it made her feel unlucky. At this time, Mrs. Zhou felt that there was a gloomy feeling all over her body, as if something unclean was staring at her. She was extremely uncomfortable. The stinky smell in the air gave her goosebumps. She pinched her nose angrily and stood up in disgust. She turned around and was about to leave in exasperation. Huo Tianxian opened her eyes and said faintly behind her, "Mrs. Zhou, did you forget something?" Hearing this, Mrs. Zhou threw the 100,000 yuan from her bag directly onto the sofa. When they agreed to make a bet, both parties had already withdrawn their money. This was to prevent them from going back on their word. Huo Tianxian wasn't angry at all and happily took the money in her hands. She gave a portion of it to Jing Yunjiao. "You take half, I'll take half. It's all thanks to you that I can earn more pocket money. The next time there's something good like this, you have to call me." Who wouldn't be willing to participate in this kind of gambling that was bound to win? Mrs. Zhou was so angry that her temples were throbbing. She glared at Jing Yunjiao fiercely and dragged Zhou Meijun out of the beauty salon in her high heels. As soon as Mrs. Zhou and her daughter left, several people became more lively in an instant. Jing, you are so handsome." Zhou Meijun's eyes almost popped out just now. Did you see how funny her expression was when she stared at the stack of money in your hands? Her heart must have ached to death. Yao Baobao said with a look of worship. Xin Tong was also very surprised. "I originally thought that you were deliberately making them angry and joking, but I didn't expect it to be true. It's indeed impressive, but how did you know that it wasn't agarwood? Furthermore, you previously said that its appearance and taste were the same as agarwood. I'm more sensitive to these things that can be used as medicinal herbs, so I can distinguish them," Jing Yunjiao said. Xin Tong nodded and took out the check and contract. "These, Aunt Tong, I'm not joking with you. If you need investment, please accept the money. It's beneficial to both of us," Jing Yunjiao said. Well, as an investor, I will report to you regularly about the situation of the beauty salon. I won't let you spend this money for nothing," Xin Tong said with a smile. In her heart, she became more and more curious about Jing Yunjiao. The girl in front of her looked a little mysterious, and her temperament would make people's eyes light up. However, Zhou Meijun had said that she was an orphan and a country bumpkin. Aunt Tong is a very trustworthy person. You can rest assured. Huo Tianxian looked generous. "But I remember that you said that you would treat us to a meal before. Since we made so much money today, I won't be polite later." Jing Yunjiao smiled helplessly and nodded. "You can choose the place." Huo Tianxian raised her eyebrows and beamed with joy. She originally thought that Jing Yunjiao's family wasn't very well off, so she thought that even if Jing Yunjiao really wanted to treat her, she would restrain herself a little. Who knew that she would actually give her 10 million yuan in one go? She was even more generous than her. It seemed that she didn't need to worry at all. Chapter 742. Previously, when they interacted with Jing Yunjiao, the other 3 had been cautious. After all, although Jing Yunjiao didn't look like he was in need of money, he was still an orphan. It was reasonable to say that he might be in need of money. Therefore, whether it was when they were chatting or when they went out this time, they were prepared to restrain themselves. They didn't want to bring up things that Jing Yunjiao hadn't come into contact with, which would cause him to feel awkward. However, things were different now. It wasn't that there was a difference between having more money and not having enough money. It was just that they didn't have to worry about it anymore. If it was in the past, talking about those expensive things from time to time would more or less make them seem like they were showing off. However, Jing Yunjiao didn't lack those things at all. When he talked about it, he felt a little unrestrained. The four of them were interrupted halfway through their treatment. However, after being delayed for so long, they didn't have the mood to continue with the beauty treatment. They might as well save the rest of their time on other things and eat and drink together outside. However, the cost wasn't that high. Jing Yunjiao wasn't a wasteful person at all. He didn't care about the price of anything, only the comfort. Therefore, they went to a mid-range restaurant. As for Hua Tianxian, she had a strong ability to accept things, so she didn't care about these things. Hua Tianxian suddenly asked in the middle of eating, "Oh right, I have a question that I've always wanted to ask you. It's about Qizhong. Before he brought me to the sanitarium, he called you sister-in-law. Is that right?" Jing Yunjiao almost spat out the mouthful of rice in his mouth. "You might have misheard." Jing Yunjiao was a little embarrassed. "Really?" Hua Tianxian raised her eyebrows. "Jing Er, you don't seem like someone who likes to lie. Don't you know that your ears are red?" "I think I heard it at that time, but I was worried about the great immortal, so I forgot to mention it." Jing, it's definitely right. He definitely called you sister-in-law," Yao Baobao said with a look of certainty. The corner of Jing Yunjiao's mouth twitched. "Tell me, who's that bro?" However, Qizhong was an insufferably arrogant and chauvinistic man. To be able to make him call someone big brother, they were either related by blood, or that man could crush him in terms of strength or intelligence. But no matter which one it is, he should be at least 8 or 9 years older than us, right? Celestial Immortal Hua said slowly as she tapped her chopsticks against the plate. Li Xiaoyan was 26 or 27 years old now. That was indeed true. As for his skills and intelligence, actually, she didn't know much about him because Li Xiaoyun had hidden himself very well. During his time in Huaning County, he had been trying to keep a low profile. He looked just a little bit more special than ordinary people, but she was sure that his IQ wasn't low and his skills weren't weak either. Thinking of Li Xiaoyun, Jing Yunjiao had a special feeling in his heart, but he didn't say anything. "We'll talk about this later," Jing Yunjiao said calmly. Hua Tianxian smiled. "Looking at you, that man is quite special to you. There's a chance." She was just saying. After all, Jing Yunjiao's personality was too cold and calm. The possibility of her liking someone like that wasn't high. However, looking at her reaction, even if she didn't like him, that man was somewhat different. Otherwise, Jing Yunjiao wouldn't have such an expression. However, Hua Tianxian was getting more and more curious. It shouldn't be easy for an ordinary man to leave such a special impression in Jing Yunjiao's heart. It seemed that Qizhong's mysterious big brother was really good to Jing Yunjiao. Jing Yunjiao's face flashed with panic, but he quickly returned to normal. Chapter 743. Hua Tianxian knew when to stop joking. After observing Jing Yunjiao's expression for a while, she didn't ask any more questions. However, looking at Jing Yunjiao's expression, she felt more and more interested. After dinner, the four of them strolled around the streets near a university. Jing Yunjiao bought a lot of daily necessities and finally carried them back to the dormitory. By then, Zhou Meijun had already returned to school. As for Mrs. Zhou, she was fuming at home. Of course, her husband was out socializing and wasn't home. Otherwise, if he found out that she had spent hundreds of thousands on a fake agarwood bracelet, he would no longer trust and praise her brother as much as he did before. "Sis, why did you suddenly call me over? As you know, school has started, and I'm going to be busy preparing for classes for the next 2 days," the man said in annoyance. Mrs. Zhou was in her early 40s, and her brother was only in his 30s. He was wearing a white shirt and trousers, a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, and a square face. He looked like a knowledgeable person. However, the only flaw was that he had a large mole near his chin, which made him look like a crooked person. Mrs. Zhou sat on the sofa and looked up at her brother. Her chest was heaving with anger. She slammed the things in her hands on the coffee table in front of her and said, "Du Rongyang, how long are you going to lie to me?" Du Rongyang was startled. He glanced at the scattered beads on the bracelet and felt a little guilty. "Sis, what do you mean by this? Didn't you take Meijun out for a facial today? Why are you suddenly so angry?" "Don't talk to me about facial. Rongyang, I've been good to you. Now you're even lying to me?" Mrs. Zhou was shaking with anger. She pointed at the beads and said, "Do you know how humiliated I was today?" She said that this thing I was carrying wasn't agarwood at all. It was a dead man's weight. It's fake. Du Rongyang's heart skipped a beat. He laughed dryly and said, "Just because of this? Sis, there are many people who don't know what's what. This thing is obviously real. Who dares to say it's fake? I'll go talk to her." Mrs. Zhou snorted and looked at her brother. "You really don't know? Sis, I would never lie to you. Besides, your brother is a university professor. I do things openly. How can I lie?" Cold sweat was about to flow down from his forehead. If he had known that his sister had found out that the item was fake, he would have called Meijun in advance to prepare himself. "You still want to argue? I've been humiliated so badly today that I can't even raise my head." Mrs. Zhou looked at her younger brother's clueless expression, and her anger subsided a little. "You're really too much. You said that it was a good method to ensure the quality of the things. In the end, this thing immediately appeared when it was burned. The smell is terrible. I don't want to go out for the next few days. If my friends ask me why I didn't bring this wooden skewer, I really don't know what to say." Jin Yu was indeed tacky, but at least she wouldn't be unable to distinguish it. That was hundreds of thousands of yuan. An ordinary family would need 20 years to earn that amount. Du Rongyang breathed a sigh of relief in his heart, but he was a little suspicious. Why did his sister suddenly think of using fire to determine whether it was real or fake? "Sis, I just found out. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I was too careless. I was deceived and made you lose face. How about this? I'll return the money to you. Although my monthly salary isn't much, I'm still a university professor." Du Rongyang looked embarrassed and a little hesitant. Mrs. Zhou's heart immediately softened when she saw that. Chapter 744. Their Du family used to be an ordinary working-class family, and their parents were not very educated. Her brother had finally managed to get into a good university and stayed in school to teach. She had also found a good husband, so there was no need to let her brother suffer for a few $100,000. Forget it. You still have a wife and children to raise. It's only a few $100,000. Your brother-in-law isn't greedy for such a small amount of money, so it's nothing to him. However, you have to be more careful next time. After all, you have a reputation to uphold. It's fine if you implicate your sister, but if you implicate others, it won't be good for you," Mrs. Zhou said with concern. At this point, Du Rongyang's face turned pale. "Sis, now that you mention it, I remember that I bought a bracelet for a colleague. Did he also realize that the bracelet was fake? What should I do? If he knows, he will definitely ask me to pay for it. He might even let the students know. Then, I will." He panicked and immediately stood up. He paced back and forth like a headless fly. After a few seconds, he said, "No, I can't just sit here and wait. I have to get that colleague to sell the bracelet back to me. But this money, sigh, forget it. Reputation is more important than money. I have saved up some money over the years. If I think about selling something from the store, I will definitely be able to do it. Sis, this time, it's all thanks to you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known that the bracelet was fake. That damn oldie actually lied to me." As he spoke, his trembling hand wiped his sweat with a tissue on the table. He looked a little scared. When Mrs. Zhou saw this, she also became anxious for her brother. "Sell what? Your family doesn't have anything to sell, right?" Mrs. Zhou immediately asked. Her brother only knew how to study when he was in school. He was an honest person and was often cheated of his money. Later, when he finally got a job, he thought that the hard times were over. However, when he first started working, he was ostracized and had to treat people to meals from time to time. He married a woman from a good family, but that woman had brothers, so she couldn't inherit the family property. She spent most of her time at home playing with the children, so her expenses were high. Furthermore, her brother was afraid of embarrassing her, so he gave her husband cigarettes and alcohol every year. Their life was considered tight. Thinking of this, Mrs. Zhou sighed. She turned around and took out a card from her bag. "There's 600,000 here. Your brother-in-law doesn't know about this, so don't tell him. Take this money and buy the bracelet. Just be careful in the future." "Sis, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm always asking for your money." Du Rongyang looked hesitant and touched. "What's wrong with that? If I had known your brother-in-law earlier, you wouldn't still be a shabby professor there. It's natural for you to work in your brother-in-law's company for your major back then. Your future would definitely be better than now. Mrs. Zhou also felt that it was a pity and said, your sister's wife is very thrifty. Usually, she won't give me a lot of money at once. Otherwise, I'll give you more. Take it well. Du Rongyang was touched, and his voice was a little hoarse. Sis, it's all thanks to you. All right, you're my younger brother. If I don't help you, who should I help? I called you over in a hurry just now. Now that there's nothing else, you can go back early, Mrs. Zhou said with a look of resignation. Yes. Du Rongyang nodded. His expression was complicated and dignified as he left Mrs. Zhou's sight. However, as soon as he left the Zhou family's gate and got into the car, the corner of Du Rongyang's mouth curled up. In the blink of an eye, he had earned another 600,000. However, the more rich people were, the more stingy they became. His brother-in-law earned hundreds of millions every year, but he never gave a little to his only brother-in-law. Fortunately, he was smart enough to ask his sister for money. Otherwise, wouldn't he be poor to death? Chapter 745. Du Rongyang put the bank card in his wallet and glanced at the villa outside through the window. He silently started the car and drove away. But on the way, he called Zhou Meijun. Meijun, I'm your uncle. You have class tomorrow. Did you have fun today? His voice was full of care and love. Zhou Meijun had always liked this uncle. When she heard his voice, the resentment in her heart disappeared. She said coquettishly, Uncle, my mother and I were bullied outside today. It was so infuriating. We were cheated of 100,000 yuan. 100,000 yuan? What happened? Du Rongyang's voice was cold. In his eyes, his sister's money was also his. 100,000 yuan was nothing to the Zhou family, but to him, it was not a small fortune. It was a pity that it was cheated away in a day. My skin hasn't been very good recently, so I went to the beauty salon with my mother. Who knew that I would meet a few annoying people, especially that Jing Yunjiao? She not only forbade my mother and me from entering the beauty salon, but also said that my mother's bracelet was fake. We made a bet on the spot. Who knew that there was a problem with the bracelet? So we lost 100,000 yuan. I feel indignant just thinking about it. Oh right, uncle. You bought that bracelet for my mother, right? How could there be a problem? Zhou Meijun asked again. When she thought of this, her voice was full of resentment. Du Rongyang was stunned for a moment. Then he said apologetically, it's all uncle's fault. Uncle was cheated too. Sigh, I'm just a small professor. I don't know much. If I had known, I wouldn't have bought agarwood and pretended to be elegant. Uncle, I don't mean to blame you. I just feel indignant that we suffered such a big loss, Zhou Meijun said. I know, but the Jing Yunjiao you mentioned, is she a student of university, eh? That's right, and who knows, uncle, you might even meet her. I'll tell you in detail when you reach school. In any case, you'll definitely be able to recognize Jing Yunjiao when you see her. The nephew and uncle talked for a while before hanging up. Jing Yunjiao, Du Rongyang murmured softly. He memorized the name and drove in peace. The night of a university was filled with a carnival-like liveliness. A few hours after Jing Yunjiao returned to her dormitory, her phone rang with a message notification. Seeing the few words on the screen, her heart skipped a beat. She got out of bed and went out. Where are you going so late? It can't be a lover, right? Celestial Immortal Hua said leisurely with a melon seed in her mouth. Jing Yunjiao's body tensed up. A friend came to visit me. I'll be back soon. The curfew starts at 11 o'clock, but if you want to sleep outside, it's fine. We're all young people, so we can understand, what Tianxian said with a smile. The corners of Jing Yunjiao's mouth twitched as he hurriedly left the room. He didn't want to continue talking nonsense with Hua Tianxian. The message was from Li Xiaoyun, saying that he was waiting for her at the school gate. She hadn't seen him after being in the capital for so long. Naturally, she had to go out and meet him. There were still many people on campus. After all, there was still the freshness of a new student. There were people wandering around and familiarizing themselves with the environment. Jing Yunjiao got closer and closer to the gate. He vaguely saw a few girls pointing outside. He looked over and saw Li Xiaoyun in a light blue shirt and a black windbreaker. He leaned against the front of his car and waited. He held a paper box in his hand. She didn't know what was inside. Chapter 746. Jing Yunjiao was dressed simply in a white shirt and denim shorts. She looked very cool and her legs were straight and slender. Another one trying to hit on me. This is the 7th one, right? A girl said when she was 4 or 5 meters away from Li Xiaoyun. But this girl is very pretty. That handsome guy should talk to her for a while, right? Anyway, if it were me, I would definitely be charmed. Another girl said, that's not necessarily true. This handsome guy is obviously here to wait for someone. How could he possibly pay attention to strangers? Besides, the few girls who hit on him just now should be seniors. All of them were dressed to the nines. But in the end, didn't they just get a get lost from him? When Jing Yunjiao heard this, she was slightly surprised. Li Xiaoyun just cursed at a girl? It really didn't seem like something a gentleman like him would do. Why are you here so late? Jing Yunjiao smiled at Li Xiaoyun and said, after all, they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Li Xiaoyun came to see her, so her attitude was naturally better. Li Xiaoyun stood up straight and looked at her from head to toe. It seems that you had a good time during military training. Second brother didn't bully you, did he? Jing Yunjiao shook her head. Instructor Qi is a fair person. I'm not a bad child. Why would he bully me? Fair? The corner of Li Xiaoyun's mouth twitched. Indeed, his second brother was the most old-fashioned, strict, and safe one among his brothers. It was precisely because of his personality that he let his second brother be the instructor instead of the other brothers. After all, he didn't want the woman he reserved to be too close to his brothers while he was away. I heard that you gave away the hemostatic ointment? Li Xiaoyun asked again. As he spoke, Jing Yunjiao vaguely heard the sound of something breaking in the paper box in his hand, as if there was a living thing inside. I've already discussed it with Qi Zhong, but he said that he still needs to report it to the higher-ups. After all, I've already given him some conditions. After Jing Yunjiao finished speaking, she asked again, have you finished the hemostatic medicine I gave you before? If you're done, I have more here. Ah Zhao, you're concerned about whether I'm injured or not, right? Li Xiaoyun's eyes flashed, and he said with a faint smile, don't worry. Although it is a little dangerous, I still have the ability to protect myself. But you... As he said that, he reached out and brushed the short hair on her head. What a pity. This hair will take at least a year to grow out. Jing Yunjiao looked very handsome with his short hair, especially when he was wearing a white shirt. He gave off a clean and refreshing feeling. However, although he was handsome, he didn't look like a tomboy. After all, Jing Yunjiao's figure was very pleasant. It was just that his slightly ascetic appearance made his appetite waver. There was a fragrance on Li Xiaoyun's hand, but it was not strong. After rubbing her head twice, he casually withdrew his hand. It was the same every time. It was as if she was a pet. After rubbing his face, he looked cold and indifferent. She was too embarrassed to speak. What's in this paper box? Why does it feel like it's alive? Jing Yunjiao simply scratched his hair twice and tidied it up. He couldn't help but ask, are you interested? Li Xiaoyun smiled. It's okay. If you don't want to say it, then forget it. After knowing Li Xiaoyun for so long, she knew a little about his temperament. The more curious she was, the more Li Xiaoyun would deliberately pretend to be ignorant. Chapter 747. Li Xiaoyun raised his eyebrows and moved closer. His handsome face was magnified in front of Jing Yunjiao. He said softly, you obviously want to know. Why are you so stubborn? I'm not stubborn. Jing Yunjiao panicked and took a step back. However, her arm was instantly pulled back by Li Xiaoyun. He held the box in one hand and said with a smile, is this what you said? If you're not interested, I'll throw this away. How old is she? From the first time he saw her, Jing Yunjiao was like a little old man. No matter what, she always had a calm appearance. Of course, this was her personality, and it was what he admired. However, he also knew that Jing Yunjiao was just restraining the curiosity of her age to do other things. Most of the time, she had a little girl's squeamishness, but in her eyes, that squeamishness was like timidity. She was afraid that if it leaked out, people would think that she was easy to bully. Therefore, she was like a hedgehog with its hair standing on end. However, in front of him, the pufferfish was cuter. It was better to use the poison to deal with others. When Li Xiaoyun said this, he tilted his hand. The box seemed to be slipping from his hand. Jing Yunzhao saw and immediately reached out to help. Is there a living thing inside? It will break if it falls to the ground. Ah Zhao, why are you so cute? Li Xiaoyun suddenly smiled. He glanced around and pushed the box in front of her. This is a university gift for you. Open it and see. For me. Jing Yunzhao was stunned. Is it a puppy or a kitten? See for yourself. Jing Yunzhao was a little hesitant. Under the streetlights, the tips of her ears were a little hot. She never thought that she would receive a gift from Li Xiaoyun. Even though many people had sent her congratulatory gifts when she became the top scorer, most of them were formal gifts for students. None of them were for pets. However, she was really curious. After thinking about it, she took it and carefully opened the box. When she saw what was inside, Jing Yunzhao was stunned. After a few seconds, her face showed a trace of amazement. A bird? This is a crow? It's not a crow, it's a raven. I encountered it when I was doing a mission. The mother bird died, and I hatched this thing. Li Xiaoyun's expression was somewhat doting. You hatched it? Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched. Why did these words sound so strange? That can't be helped. The other eggs were all swallowed by the snake, leaving only this one. I wanted to cook it, but I heard that the dodo bird has a high IQ, comparable to that of a gorilla. It should be suitable for you, Li Xiaoyun said simply. Of course, this was not the only reason. The raven was not a beautiful bird, but it was very smart and cunning. It could also learn human language. Most importantly, the raven was a type of bird that mainly lived alone. Other than its mate, it usually did not have anyone else to cooperate with. It was a kind of husband and wife bird. Jing Yunzhao didn't think too much about it. He was really stunned by the black guy in front of him. Although it was completely black, it was different from other birds. Its body had a kind of purple and blue flowing light, and its feathers were very neat and smooth. Its neck was raised high, and there was a rose in its mouth. It didn't look very big, and only its feathers were fully grown. However, its pair of eyes were very lively. When she reached out to tease it, it put the rose in its mouth into her palm. Ah Zhao, suddenly, the raven in front of her opened its mouth and let out a low and somewhat strange voice. Chapter 748. Jing Yunzhao was shocked. Her eyes widened, and she pointed at the little guy, speechless. It can talk? Jing Yunzhao's face was a little red after holding back for a while. Its voice was not as sharp as a parrot's. On the contrary, it was more like the sound of a person coughing, so it did not sound noisy. Instead, it gave her a feeling of shock. After all, the little guy in front of her looked very young, and Li Xiaoyun could teach it to imitate human language so early. You have to reward it with something to eat. Li Xiaoyun's mouth curved, and the smile in his eyes could not be restrained. But I don't. Jing Yunzhao's voice was a little excited, but she immediately reacted. She coughed twice and looked at Li Xiaoyun with some embarrassment. Thank you. I like it very much. But Li Xiaoyun, what does it eat? Will it be noisy? Because I live in the dormitory, after all, I'm not the only one. It is an omnivore. It eats meat, fruits, and insects, and you can rest assured that it will not be noisy. If it is really noisy, it will generally beg you to feed it. At present, it can only say the two words "ah Zhao." You can teach it other words. I guarantee that it will be very obedient. Li Xiaoyun's face showed some pride. Jing Yunzhao's attention was almost completely attracted by the little guy, and it looked completely adorable. Although this little fellow was pitch black and not as adorable as kittens and puppies, it was different from the rest. Its sparkling eyes were actually aqua blue. Especially when it stared at her, it completely treated her as if she was family. She couldn't even feel the slightest bit of disgust. Ah Zhao, N. Jing Yunzhao smiled, and her expression became a lot warmer. She did not even raise her head. What is it like? Is it a female bird or a male bird? Li Xiaoyun's temple twitched. It is a male bird, and it likes shiny things. In addition, it has a high IQ. And sometimes it is a little childish. It looks like it's very smart. Should I use a name? As Jing Yunjiao spoke, she was already hugging the box a little tighter. Looking at this action, Li Xiaoyun only felt that his heart had suffered a blow. He had only contributed a pet, and his value had dropped? Had he been beaten by his own hatchlings? He had guessed that Jing Yunjiao would be interested in this smart-looking little guy, but he didn't expect her reaction to be bigger than he had imagined. I don't have a name. You pick one. Li Xiaoyun suddenly felt a little hot. He took off his jacket and held it in his hands. Jing Yunjiao was stunned for a moment. He immediately lowered his head and looked at Raven in the paper box. Black Emperor. He was dressed in black, but the purplish-blue flowing light around him gave him a handsome look. She was quite satisfied with this name. Li Xiaoyun rubbed his brows. Black Emperor. Forget it. He was not going to argue with a bird. Are you satisfied with this gift? Li Xiaoyun changed the topic and asked. Jing Yunjiao immediately regained his serious look and nodded. Thank you, young Master Li. Are you my subordinate? Li Xiaoyun raised his eyebrows. What? Jing Yunjiao was stunned. You've accepted my gift, and we've known each other for 2.5 years. Why are you calling me young Master Li? Only people who are not familiar with me call me that. Li Xiaoyun paused, bent his waist slightly, and reached out to her ear. Actually, I like to hear mushy words. For example, brotherly, Xiaoyun. Brotherly, Jing Yunjiao's mind suddenly went blank. Her face turned cold, and goosebumps appeared on her body. Xiaoyun was fine, but he actually called her brother. Chapter 749. Jing Yunjiao's body was as straight as a pencil as she hurriedly took a big step back. That, Xiao Yun. Curfew is coming soon. I'll go back to the dormitory first. Drive carefully. After saying that, she turned around and left nervously. She didn't dare to stay any longer because she felt her heart beating faster. This was a sign that she was going to get sick. If she stayed for too long, she would panic, be short of breath, feel thirsty, feel weak all over, and blush. It shouldn't be like this. Maybe it was because she hadn't seen Li Xiaoyun for a long time. Or maybe it was because she was used to being called sister-in-law by Qizhong recently. Or maybe it was because Li Xiaoyun's sudden gift made her a little uneasy. Because no one had ever treated her like this. When she was in trouble, no matter what her attitude or tone was, he helped without hesitation. When she was at her most ordinary and simple time, he abandoned the bustling capital city and found all kinds of excuses to accompany her. Habit was the most addictive thing in the world. As the cool breeze blew, Jing Yunjiao, who was at a loss, calmed down a little. However, at this moment, her phone rang again. She took it out and saw that it was another message from Li Xiaoyun. I'm satisfied with the way you call me. If you don't want me to suddenly become a teacher of a university, remember to report Black King's situation every night. After all, that's the bird I hatched. Jing Yunjiao was speechless. Why did she feel that Li Xiaoyun was very proud of the fact that she hatched a bird? Okay, Jing Yunjiao replied. At this moment, Li Xiaoyun, who was still standing at the school gate, heard his phone ring. He took it out and saw a simple word that made his expression soften. Raising that bird was indeed useful. He smiled and opened the car door. However, there was a slender finger that blocked his strength. Handsome, want to go for a ride? In front of him, there was a flirtatious woman. Li Xiaoyun raised his eyebrows and glanced at her. He saw that this woman seemed to have a problem with her body. Her butt was shaking non-stop and her body was leaning forward, as if she wanted to stick those two disgusting things to him. His eyes turned cold. Okay. Li Xiaoyun's voice was cold. When the woman heard that, she jumped for joy and hurriedly walked to the front passenger seat. However, she heard Li Xiaoyun say, "Sit in the back." The woman was stunned. But on second thought, this man looked like a serious person. He must be afraid of others gossiping. It would be different when there was no one around. She sat behind him happily. Li Xiaoyun sneered. After a while, the car sped away at an astonishing speed. Drive slowly. The woman broke out in a cold sweat. However, no one responded. After more than 2 hours, the car finally stopped. The car was already in the suburbs. There was no one around. There was a highway in the distance, but there were very few cars. The woman heaved a sigh of relief and quickly got out of the car to calm herself down. However, As soon as the woman got out of the car, Li Xiaoyun started the car again without saying a word. Sigh. I haven't gotten in the car yet. And my bag, the woman shouted from behind. But the luxurious car soon disappeared into the night, leaving no trace behind. The woman was stunned. She looked around and saw that it was pitch black. The cold wind made her body feel cold. She was only wearing a bra and shivered in the cold. Not only that, there was a rustling sound around her. She felt like there was something unclean around her. Old 7. I'll go to your place later and remove all my seats and replace them. At this moment, Li Xiaoyun's cold voice came from the car. Chapter 750. Jing Yunzhao naturally didn't know that in the middle of the night, Li Xiaoyun had thrown a beautiful woman into the wilderness without leaving a single cent behind. When she returned to the dormitory, she was already under the scorching gazes of the three people, her face full of uneasiness. Does a crow look like this? The glow of its feathers is so cool. It's purplish blue. Ignorant. This is a raven, okay? This thing often appears in movies, and it's usually accompanied by corpses. It's not a good luck charm, Hua Tianxian said deliberately. Regardless of whether it was a raven or a jackdaw, this kind of bird was considered inauspicious to many people. However, Hua Tianxian also knew that crows were the most intelligent birds in the family of birds. Moreover, most birds would only have one partner in their lifetime, and were extremely loyal. Ah Zhao. Heidi wasn't afraid of people at all. At this moment, it was pacing around Jing Yunzhao's desk, calling out as it walked. This call made everyone turn to stone instantly. Even Hua Tianxian, who had been disdainful a second ago, widened her eyes. It can talk? Look at its eyes. It's still a young bird. Young ravens' eyes were aqua blue, and when they reached adulthood, they would slowly turn dark brown. However, generally speaking, even if it was a hand-raised bird, teaching it to talk was not something that could be done overnight. Jing Yunzhao's gaze softened. He hurriedly used his bag to cover it and took out a small bag of fruits and grains from his space. He picked a few varieties and placed them in front of Heidi to see if there was anything that it liked. However, Jing Yunzhao obviously overlooked this little fellow's intelligence. He watched as Heidi swallowed a few pomegranates, then used its wings to sweep everything behind itself. After that, it obediently looked at Jing Yunzhao and the others. Ah Zhao. It called out again. Hua Tianxian swallowed her saliva. Didn't they say that animals are not allowed to become spirits after the founding of the country? What a monster. It called out your name to cheat you for food. Yao Baobao was also confused. So cute. Yunzhao. Heidi is really amazing. Rin Xingyue's eyes lit up. Jing Yunzhao was also stunned for a moment. She stretched out a finger, originally wanting to pat Black Emperor's head, but who knew that Black Emperor would directly stand on her hand with an obedient look on his face. Jing Yunzhao pursed her lips and smiled. Dee is very obedient. I'll be taking care of it for a while. If it's noisy, it's not noisy. It's not noisy at all. No problem at all. The three of them said. The corner of Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched. I'll try my best to teach him well, but Black Emperor also needs to rest at night, so he probably won't make a fuss. Plus, my friend said that he rarely opens his mouth to make noise. However, Hua Tianxian and the other two didn't mind at all and waved their hands. Heidi is going to be the little emperor of our dorm in the future. Who would dislike such a smart fellow? But why didn't I think of raising this breed before? Not only does it look cool, but it's also so cute. Especially with its intelligence, it's much better than other puppies of the same age. Jing, can you let it stand on my hand and play with it for a while? I want to try. Yao Baobao said eagerly. She had never raised a pet, not even a cat or a dog. Ever since she was born, her parents had given away all the pets at home, saying that they had germs on them. They said that she was weak and it would be bad if she touched them. But in reality, she was very healthy. Every time she saw other people with pets, she felt very envious. Chapter 751. Although Li Xiaoyun was the one who gave Heidi to her, Jing Yunzhao wasn't so stingy as to keep it to herself. She directly handed it over. Yao Baobao carefully stretched out her hand to catch it, But who knew that Heidi would move his feet and crawl from Jing Yunzhao's hand to her arm, as if he didn't want to acknowledge her. Hua Tianxian didn't want to give up, so she quickly reached out to join in the fun. However, Heidi's wings flapped, and it instantly flew up. 2 seconds later, it landed firmly on Jing Yunzhao's shoulder. Its whole body was pressed against her neck, and it looked like it wasn't willing to go anywhere. Are you sure this is your first time interacting with Heidi? Hua Tianxian's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Yao Baobao was even more envious. She couldn't wait to become Jing Yunzhao and play with Heidi for a while. Jing Yunzhao was also a little surprised. Although Heidi was very intimate with her at the beginning, it wasn't to this extent. Could it be because she gave Heidi something to eat just now? Take the things on the table and feed it to it? Jing Yunzhao said uncertainly. Hua Tianxian and the other two nodded. They were about to pick up the pomegranates, but just as their fingers touched them, Heidi rushed over and pecked Hua Tianxian's finger lightly without hesitation, as if it was protecting its food. It can't be? Just you wait. Hua Tianxian was speechless. She quickly went to her seat and took the fruits she usually ate, placing them in her hands to tempt Heidi. Unfortunately, Heidi didn't even look at them. Heidi has really become a spirit. Hua Tianxian shook her head in confusion. It looks like we'll have to watch Jing Er and Heidi show off their love in the future. There was clearly a magical and cute species in front of her, but she couldn't even get close to it. This feeling was too hurtful for a young girl. Jing Yunzhao thought for a moment, then took out the same fruit as Hua Tianxian from his pocket and handed it to her. Try this. Aren't they all the same? Could it be that your fruits are better than mine? Before he could finish his sentence, Heidi suddenly jumped into Hua Tianxian's hand, grabbed the item, turned around, and flew back. Although it was only for a short moment, it was much stronger than the indifference just now. Jing Yunzhao heaved a sigh of relief, revealing an expression of, as expected. The reason for Heidi's behavior seemed to be related to the location where the fruits were produced. The fruits and grains in the space were all irrigated by the blue spring. Not only were they fresh, but they also tasted exceptionally sweet. They were also good for the body, which was completely different from the ones outside. Heidi might have noticed the difference in the food she gave him, which was why he suddenly became so abnormal. However, Hua Tianxian and the other two did not know the reason behind this. Seeing this scene, their faces turned bitter. They had never seen such a picky bird before. Could it be that the food that Jing Yunzhao touched tasted better? Jing Yunzhao also felt a little embarrassed. She took a big travel bag from the bed and took out a lot of fresh fruits. These grains and fruits were all planted by my master. They're a little special and taste better than the ones outside. I think it's because of this Black Emperor that he's picky with his food. You guys can try some too. Is that so? Hua Tianxian was a little doubtful, but she was already holding an apple in her hand. With a cottage sound, she took a bite and immediately gave a thumbs up. It's so sweet, and it's not greasy. No wonder. They had been in the military training base all this time, so these fruits could not be taken out to enjoy. Hearing Hua Tianxian's words, the other two did not hold back. However, after tasting a mouthful, they all showed a somewhat shocked expression. One after another, they ate 2 or 3 more until their stomachs were full. Only then did they restrain their appetite. Chapter 752. The fruits produced in Jing Yunzhao's space were highly sought after by the outside world. Currently, they were all sold at Yutianxian. Because the fruits weren't taken out, many people specially went to Yutianxian just to have a taste, causing the restaurant to become more and more popular. During the previous holidays, Du Lin had already contracted a lot of land in the name of the two of them. Some vegetables that didn't grow for long were already edible, so she didn't have to go through the trouble of transporting them. As for the quality of the vegetables, all the seeds were soaked in the space's blue spring. Although they weren't as good as those that grew in the space, they were 10,000 times better than those outside. And Du Lin wasn't a boss who only stuck to a small county. In her previous life, his achievements weren't low. Now, he was preparing to open a large branch in the capital. However, it would take time to choose a location and open it. And for the new restaurant, she and Li Xiaoyun would both hold shares in it. But thinking of this, Jing Yunzhao's face revealed a trace of a smile. After her rebirth, she had changed too many things. Even the industries related to her were increasing. She had companies and real estate, but she still lacked a house. Anyway, she was alone, so she wasn't in a hurry to buy one. The few people in the dormitory didn't expect Jing Yunjiao to have such a good thing in her hands. One by one, they hurriedly inquired about her mysterious master's plantation. Jing Yunjiao found a lot of excuses to evade them. She promised that if there were fresh fruits in the future, they wouldn't be left out. Heidi was indeed an extremely quiet little fella. Other than occasionally opening his mouth to call out a Zhao, he was basically very well behaved. That night, he even slept at Jing Yunjiao's bedside. His sleeping posture was also a little different from normal birds. He sprawled out on his back next to her pillow, just like a puppy that could fly. Jing Yunjiao became more and more curious about how Li Xiaoyun educated this little fellow. The next morning, the few of them went to the classroom together. Heidi naturally couldn't follow. If it was placed in the space, when they returned to the dormitory, the others would be worried if they couldn't see it. Therefore, they could only let it stay in the dormitory alone. Before leaving, the few of them were reluctant to part, afraid that Heidi would be lonely. However, it was clear that he had underestimated the Black Emperor. The little guy was playing on the mini-swing made by Jing Yunjiao. It was having a great time. The table was full of shiny little things given by Hua Tianxian and the others. Obviously, it was in a good mood. This was only the first semester of university. Studies were not that important, but there were more common classes. University A was a school that nurtured the aura of nobility. Other than some necessary courses, there would be etiquette lessons from the start. Jing Yunjiao majored in business, so he would also need to learn business etiquette. Other than that, there would also be some other activities, such as various exhibitions, cocktail parties, and etiquette. Basically, it was to nurture students into high-end talents. The few of them arrived at the classroom on time before class started. Because the students in the class had all met during the military training, they all got along very well. When they saw Jing Yunjiao, they all looked over at the same time. Just now, the head teacher came over and asked us to discuss the candidate for the class monitor. Jing Yunjiao, you did well during the military training. We want you to continue to be. As soon as they entered the classroom, someone stepped forward and said, most of the people here were a group of rich young ladies and young masters. They weren't interested in the class monitor position at all. To them, being the class monitor was just asking for trouble. Of course, Jing Yunjiao knew that although these rich young ladies and young masters didn't want to be the class monitor, the other ordinary students might not. After all, being the class monitor would leave a deeper impression on the teachers. There were still benefits. Chapter 753. Jing Yunjiao had never liked trouble. Although she wasn't the class monitor in high school, she had been enslaved by Old Man Qi for 2 years. Now that she had finally gotten rid of the old man, she wouldn't be so stupid as to offer herself up again. I'm afraid I can't because I don't have much time, Jing Yunjiao said politely. Sure enough, Jing Yunjiao could hear a sigh of relief coming from quite a number of students. But other than you, I can't think of anyone more suitable, Hua Tianxian said. Just let me go. I'm planning to work and earn some money when I'm free. Being the class monitor is very busy, especially being the class monitor of a university. It's better to leave this kind of thing to someone else. Jing Yunjiao waved her hand and found a seat. Work? Are you short of money? Hua Tianxian was stunned. Didn't Jing Yunjiao just invest 10 million yuan? Once the beauty salon was reorganized, there would be a lot of money coming in every year. Why would she need to work? This word was too foreign to her. Jing Yunjiao wasn't lying about working. The pharmaceutical factory would be built soon, and she would be very busy. Besides, she couldn't delay her medical skills. She was also planning to find a clinic to practice her skills. The class monitor of a university had always been busier than the homeroom teacher. She didn't have the energy to take on this responsibility. Is there anyone who isn't short of money? Jing Yunjiao smiled and said. Hua Tianxian choked. Her question was a little too stupid. Nowadays, people rarely thought of money. Even the richest man in the world would think that he didn't have enough money. Everyone knew that Jing Yunjiao came from an ordinary family. Since she had rejected so clearly, they didn't want to force her. In the end, after another round of discussion, The class monitor was chosen by a man who looked like a teacher. He wore a pair of glasses and looked very gentle. His name was Han Nan. Jing Yunzhao had never talked to him before, so she didn't know much about him. But looking at him, although he looked gentle, he was polite and generous. He wasn't shy at all. He was indeed a good choice. As for the homeroom teacher, he was a meticulous middle-aged man. There was nothing special about him. After deciding on a series of chores, it was time for class to officially begin. However, almost all classes began with the drowsy expressions of the students. However, the students couldn't be blamed for this. The freshmen were still enthusiastic, but it was a pity that most of the things that the lecturers were talking about were just getting started. It was a bit boring, especially those about ideology and morality, which made the atmosphere in the room even more boring. Students, you are all freshmen. Today is the first day of my class, so I will introduce myself to you in Mandarin. However, in order to improve everyone's ability in the future, we will talk in a foreign language from the official class. Is that okay with you? In one class, a middle-aged lecturer on the stage said. Everyone sighed. Although they had been learning American language since a long time ago, it was still a little troublesome to learn some complicated words. This lecturer is a professor, but he's only an assistant professor. He's one level lower than an associate professor, but I heard that he doesn't like people calling him assistant professor the most. Students usually call him Professor Du. It's very useful. A girl behind Jing Yunzhao whispered. Jing Yunzhao looked up and glanced at Professor Du. She didn't have a good impression of him. She always felt that this person's kind appearance didn't match his appearance. The big black mole on his chin almost destroyed the balance of his whole face. He seemed a little unjust and sinister. Your grades in high school were not bad. I heard that there was a student who was only 1 point away from getting full marks in the college entrance examination. Is that right? Then I would like to ask this student to record what I said in class every time after class so that students who don't understand this can review it. Is that okay? Du Rongyang said again. Chapter 754. Everyone was stunned by Du Rongyang's words. In less than 2 seconds, there was a commotion. A student who's 1 mark away from full marks? That can't be, right? Is there such a perverted person? Hua Tianxian scoffed and said, if he's not cheating, then he's a monster, right? Moreover, if such a student is admitted, how can the school leaders not publicize it? I'm afraid there will be banners at the school gate to welcome him, right? Everyone was whispering. Students asking about the college entrance exam results could be heard everywhere. Du Rongyang's gaze swept across everyone and finally landed on Jing Yunzhao. He said amiably, I've seen the photo. It should be this female student, right? Everyone followed his gaze and finally landed on Jing Yunzhao and Hua Tianxian. Hua Tianxian was stunned. She turned and stared at Jing Yunzhao. You're that monster? Do I have to record everything? Jing Yunzhao asked. That's right. It's also to train your dictation skills. You got full marks in English. You should be able to do this, right? Du Rongyang said again. Jing Yunzhao glanced at Du Rongyang. She felt that there was something against her in his plain eyes. It made her feel like she was being targeted by a prey. She was a martial artist and had sharp senses. She couldn't be wrong. Okay. Jing Yunzhao's eyes darkened as she replied simply. Du Rongyang smiled with satisfaction. Then, he said, University is a place for you to start anew. Therefore, I hope that all of you can learn modestly. Your past results don't mean anything. After entering University A, everyone is the same. He continued his long speech. The more he said, the stranger Jing Yunzhao felt. It was as if he was deliberately saying this for her to hear. A second ago, he was still talking about her results. The next second, he said that everyone was the same. If he really thought that everyone was the same, he wouldn't have asked her to be the recorder, right? However, it was obvious that apart from Jing Yunzhao, no one else cared about this problem. Many people were still in a daze from the thunderous roar. Hua Tianxian stared at Jing Yunzhao as if she had just seen a ghost. She couldn't accept it. I thought you were just a little stronger in terms of physical strength. He was 1 point away from full marks, so he should be the top scorer, right? This was the first time she had seen such a low-key top scorer. She always felt that Jing Yunzhao was like an all-rounder. Nothing could stump her. Even her pet was different from other people's. This made her even more curious about her mysterious lover. To be able to match up to this evildoer and give her such a pet, the structure of his brain should be different from a normal person's, right? Did you find a way to find out the content of the exam? What Tianxian asked with a strange look on her face. Jing Yunzhao glanced at her. Miss Hua, if you couldn't find a way, how could I? That's true. I found a lot of teachers who had set the questions before to guess the questions. I guessed a lot of questions correctly. You can't have guessed more questions than me. Hua Tianxian sighed. Why don't you just tell me? What else do we not know? We'll have a chance to find out what we don't know in the future, Jing Yunzhao said simply with a smile. Hua Tianxian was a loudspeaker. If people found out about the company she was running, it wouldn't take long for everyone to find out. When that time came, she would be in a lot of trouble. However, she didn't plan to keep it a secret forever. The market for Yuling wines had already been established. Everything was getting more and more stable. It wasn't a listed company, so it could withstand changes in the management. Once the development in Jing City stabilized, she would tell Haiqing and the others. Chapter 755. Jing Yunzhao had been mysterious for more than a day. Hua Tianxian did not intend to get to the bottom of it, but she did feel a little hurt. After all, her arrogance was pale and powerless in front of Jing Yunzhao. None of her previous friends were like Jing Yunzhao, who had endless mysteries that she could not dig out. Now, after Du Rongyang finished speaking, the class officially began. However, although it was a foreign language class, Du Rongyang's words were still considered simple. She tried to use common vocabulary to express herself. After all, if the students could not understand at the beginning, it would be a big problem in the future. Jing Yunzhao's results in this subject were not bad. She was not only good at writing, but also had no problem communicating at a normal speed. Moreover, she had a good memory, so she did not find it difficult to record. Hua Tianxian did not believe it at first, but when she saw her rapidly writing down sentences, she was shocked speechless. Normal people would not even be able to keep up when recording Mandarin, let alone a foreign language. However, Jing Yunzhao was good. Not only did she not miss a word, but the foreign language symbols she wrote were as beautiful as printing. They looked very neat and beautiful, much more beautiful than Teacher Du's handwriting. Because Jing Yunzhao had to record the class, Hua Tianxian did not dare to chat with her. When the bell rang, she said, I don't think I have seen your handwriting before, right? Write a few Mandarin words for me to see? Jing Yunzhao did not understand what she meant. She picked up the pen and drew on the paper. Hua Tianxian was shocked. Jing Yunzhao's handwriting was handsome and beautiful. She felt that it was better than the handwriting of the Chinese calligraphy masters she knew. Have you specially practiced before? Jing Yunzhao, you are too abnormal. I think the heavens are fair, but aren't they a little too biased towards you? Hua Tianxian was surprised. At this time, before Du Rongyang left the classroom, she took a deep look at Jing Yunzhao. She didn't say much and only reminded the students that Jing Yunzhao would record the contents of his class. At this time, there were already people coming forward to check what she had written. It wasn't that they were interested in what the teacher was talking about, but that the teacher was praising Jing Yunzhao to be amazing. As a result, everyone wanted to know if this top student, who was 1 point away from a Grand Slam, was the real deal. Jing Yunzhao suddenly understood what Du Rongyang was trying to say. If she wrote the wrong words, she was afraid that her classmates would doubt her ability or even the authenticity of her results. Jing Yunzhao chuckled as he looked at Du Rongyang's back. He turned to Hua Tianxian and said, I didn't expect you to think that God is fair. Hua Tianxian was stunned for a moment before she smiled and said, That's true. I was just saying it casually. However, I'm definitely biased towards you. She was good-looking, had good grades, and had good stamina. How could he not be biased? You can say that, Jing Yunzhao said ambiguously. In her previous life, she felt that God was too cruel to her. She had been deceived for more than 20 years and became the Qiao family's lucky star. She had suffered since she was young. Until her death, she had died an unjust death. Unfortunately, she was reborn and everything was different. However, rather than being biased, it was more like she had seized the opportunity to start a new life. Whether it was her studies or her stamina, She had worked hard to learn them. She had never dared to slack off. Even her calligraphy was the same. After she had dropped out of school in her previous life, the only thing she could do was to practice her calligraphy. After her rebirth, it had become a habit, and she liked to write and draw. Therefore, she did not regress. Jing Er, that teacher due just now, was there something strange about him? What Tianxian saw so many students coming over to check what Jing Yunzhao had written. She suddenly felt that something was wrong and asked. Chapter 756. Hua Tianxian wasn't an ordinary student. She had seen all kinds of conspiracy theories since she was young. She didn't think there was anything wrong with it at first, but that didn't mean she always thought that Professor Du was a good person. Hua Tianxian also felt that something was wrong with what Jing Yunzhao had discovered. Professor Du Rongyang seemed to think highly of Jing Yunzhao, but he was actually targeting him. However, Du Rongyang and Jing Yunzhao hadn't met before, so Hua Tianxian wasn't sure. It's weird, Jing Yunzhao nodded. He probably doesn't like me, but he's not the first. Did you know him in the past? Hua Tianxian thought for a while and said, ordinary teachers don't ask students to be recorders. After all, we've just entered university, and we haven't even taken the foreign language certificate. No matter how good our grades were in the past, we don't have the ability to remember everything, right? If you can't remember it well, then it means that your ability is fake. It's reasonable that you did it well. This job is too unfair. Hua Tianxian suddenly understood. You're right, but he's a teacher. What he wants me to do is for my own good, so I can't refuse. Jing Yunzhao leaned back and said softly. Du Rongyang had praised her for a long time, and her classmates probably thought that the teacher treated her very well. Under such circumstances, she couldn't express her dissatisfaction. But this is simple, Jing Yunzhao suddenly said coldly. What do you mean? Hua Tianxian raised her eyebrows and asked. He's not targeting you for no reason. Tianxian, your family is quite powerful in Beijing. If possible, can you help me investigate Du Rongyang's situation? Jing Yunzhao asked again. Hua Tianxian immediately said, that's easy. I'll call my mother later. But is that all? I thought you would find a way to repay me. Jing Yunzhao smiled. Of course, it couldn't be that simple. As a lecturer, Du Rongyang did have the upper hand. However, she was not an ordinary girl. If she wanted to teach him a lesson, she still had the ability. He just needed an opportunity. Jing Yunzhao's smile made Hua Tianxian feel that there was something fishy going on. A sense of anticipation rose in her heart. However, when this feeling surfaced in her heart, she couldn't help but feel a little baffled. Had she been poisoned by Jing Yunzhao? She always felt that she, a dignified young lady, had recently become a cuckold with Jing Yunzhao as the center of attention. Jing Er, who do you think is prettier between you and me? Hua Tianxian's tone suddenly became a little strange. Her face was gentle. Even Jing Er had become Jing Er, which sounded a little strange. Hua Tianxian had a perfect oval face. She was pretty and stylish. However, Jing Yunzhao was not one to flatter others. After taking a closer look at her, he said, it depends on how you compare. Oh? Hua Tianxian raised her eyebrows. In terms of attractiveness and beauty, I'm not as good as you. In terms of aura and temper, you're worse than me. Actually, you don't even need to compare yourself to me. I'm different from you. You're a princess who stays in a castle. I'm a general who fights on the battlefield all the time. The difference is huge. Jing Yunzhao spoke the truth. Hua Tianxian couldn't help but burst out laughing. This is the first time I've seen someone praise themselves like this. I used to think that I was pretty narcissistic. I didn't expect that you're not bad either. Why did I think that you were reserved? Chapter 757. Although Hua Tianxian said that, she felt much better. Jing Yunzhao was indeed different from her. Even their starting points were different. How could they be compared? Moreover, the two of them could be considered good friends. How could there be a difference between red flowers and green leaves? I guess I'm being petty, but you can't blame me. Who told you to have so many secrets? Hua Tianxian smiled magnanimously. In her heart, she admitted that the reason she wanted to be friends with Jing Yunzhao was because of her unique aura. The two of them whispered to each other for a while before the surrounding crowd finally dispersed. However, it had to be said that after seeing what Jing Yunjiao had memorized, everyone was in a state of shock. Ordinary people simply couldn't keep up with this kind of hearing, hand speed, and brain speed. The class monitor, Han Nan, looked at Jing Yunjiao a few more times. He couldn't help but be amazed. Then, he turned and teased the students next to him. The first day passed peacefully. In the afternoon, classes ended early. The sun hadn't even set yet. Jing Yunjiao's mind was filled with thoughts of Black Emperor. He hurriedly prepared to leave the class. Jing Yunjiao. Before they even left the classroom, a gentle voice came from in front of them. The voice was directed at Hua Tianxian and the rest. I want to have a few words with Jing Yunjiao. Can you guys wait outside for a while? Jing Yunjiao looked up. It was Han Nan. Han Nan was nearly 1.8 meters tall. He was handsome and had a good figure. He was different from the boys of his age who had just entered the school. He had the air of a senior and looked sunny and amiable. Hua Tianxian smiled knowingly. Without another word, she grabbed Ren Xingyue and Yao Baobao and turned to leave. What's the matter? Jing Yunjiao took 2 steps back. He kept a safe distance. Sensing Jing Yunjiao's distance, Han Nan was stunned for a moment. But he quickly recovered and smiled. I just saw your notes. Your memory is really good. And your handwriting is very beautiful. So? Jing Yunjiao frowned and asked again. She had never liked to get too close to boys. This was a habit she had developed over the years. It was the same even when she was friends with Gan Jinshan and Tang Zihua in high school. If there was no special reason, she would not be alone with them. This was to prevent others from gossiping. Han Nan looked a bit embarrassed. Some people said that Jing Yunjiao was hard to get along with, and the boys said that Jing Yunjiao was a cold beauty. Sure enough, they were right. However, he liked this kind of girl even more. She wouldn't flirt with guys and looked very clean. Don't misunderstand. Han Nan hurriedly explained. Actually, my English isn't very good. I was thinking, every time you memorize Mr. Du's lecture, can you lend it to me for a night? I want to copy it all down. When everyone wanted you to be the class monitor, you said you wanted to work. Then, can you help me with my English? Can I pay you by the hour? After Han Nan finished speaking, he looked at Jing Yunjiao expectantly. I can lend you my notebook, but I'll pass on the tutoring. Jing Yunjiao simply replied and handed over the notes she had just copied. She had listened to it and memorized it. In addition, she had written it down with a pen, so she had a deep impression of it. It wouldn't take long for her to rewrite it when she got back. It wasn't that she had to rewrite it. It was just that Mr. Du was hostile to her and had specifically issued this task, just in case she had to leave something behind. After all, the notes were for her classmates to see. If she lost them, she wouldn't be able to explain herself. Then, Mr. Du would have enough reason to mock her. Chapter 758. Jing Yunjiao's clear rejection caused Han Nan's face to be filled with disappointment. However, not long after, he revealed a slight smile. As he watched Jing Yunjiao leave the classroom, he lowered his head and flipped open the notebook. Reaching out his hand to touch the neat handwriting, a different feeling arose in his heart. Class monitor Han has taken a liking to you, right? Hua Tianxian asked on the way back. You're thinking too much. Jing Yunjiao simply replied, unwilling to talk about it. Hua Tianxian's lips curled up. She still had a good eye for people. Just now, Han Nan only had eyes for Jing Yunjiao. If he didn't like her, why would he act like that? However, it was a pity that Jing Yunjiao wasn't the type of girl who was suited to be lovey-dovey. Class monitor Han Nan was destined to be a goner. The group returned to the dormitory. Jing Yunjiao didn't stay for long. Taking advantage of the fact that it was still early, he tidied up his things and went out. He originally wanted to bring Black King with him, but after seeing the resentful looks of Yao Baobao and the others, he decided against it. She had a lot of land in her space, but not all kinds of plants. So, she wanted to go to the market. In addition, she also wanted to go to the flower and bird market to see if there was anything suitable for Black King. There were buses in front of a university that went to various places in the capital. Jing Yunjiao didn't find it troublesome and got on. There were quite a lot of students on the bus. After all, It was only 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So, many students chose to go out to work or go shopping at this time. However, there were a lot of people on the bus and there were no seats available. Following closely behind Jing Yunjiao was an old man who looked to be in his 60s or 70s. Jing Yunjiao couldn't help but think of Old Man Su. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. The old man wore a light gray sportswear and looked very energetic. After getting on the bus, he didn't look around to find a seat. Instead, he stood next to Jing Yunjiao and happily looked at the scenery outside. "Student, can you give this old man a seat?" "Thank you." Jing Yunjiao glanced at the old man and turned to the boy sitting next to him. "No need, no need. We'll be there soon." The old man was startled and waved his hand. "Your legs are a little swollen, and it's a little crowded here. It's better for you to sit down and rest," Jing Yunjiao said. When the old man heard this, he couldn't help but look at Jing Yunjiao a few more times. He couldn't help but ask, "I'm wearing long pants. How can you tell?" "When you got into the car, your clothes were stretched, so your ankles were exposed. In addition, the way you walk is different from ordinary people. Also, there is the smell of medicinal herbs on you. I have a good sense of smell, so I can smell it," Jing Yunjiao explained. The old man was of medium build, neither fat nor thin. He looked very healthy and energetic, but there was something wrong with his expression when he walked. He seemed to be struggling a little. Because the old man got into the car right behind her, it was easy for her to notice his condition after she stood in position. Everyone had more or less some problems. She was good at observation, but most people only had some minor problems, such as a cold, cough, simple external injuries, or problems with the oil on the skin. However, they weren't serious, so she wouldn't say much. However, the old man's condition was more serious. His legs were swollen, and there were many reasons. The old man's face was a little gloomy, and there seemed to be a spider mole on his neck covered by his clothes. If she guessed right, the old man should have a liver disease. He got into the car from the gate of a university. He had a scholarly aura, and his voice was strong but a little hoarse. He was most likely a lecturer in this university. At this time, Jing Yunjiao said simply, so the boy couldn't refuse. He quickly got up and let the old man sit. Chapter 759. The old man no longer refused and sat down after thanking the boy. He looked up at Jing Yunjiao and asked, "Are you a student of a university? What are you studying?" They had only met for less than a minute, but he could tell that his legs were not well, and he was so sensitive to herbs. It was a pity that such a talented person did not become a doctor or a police officer. "I'm studying management," Jing Yunjiao said politely. The old man was a little surprised and disappointed. Jing Yunjiao looked at him and thought for a moment before saying, "You should be a lecturer in Chinese studies, right? Or a professor." "You know me?" The old man was even more disappointed. He thought that he had met a little girl with good observation skills, but he did not expect that this girl had come prepared. "You got into the car at a university. Your voice was a little hoarse, and you paid attention to your appearance. It is more likely that you are a teacher. When I said that I was studying management, you looked a little disappointed. Ordinary teachers would not be like this, but the teachers in Chinese studies are more arrogant. They are not interested in majors that are full of the smell of money. Some even look down on students who may become businessmen in the future. In addition, there are some calluses on your hands. It seems that you are a calligraphy master," Jing Yunjiao explained clearly. She did not intend to say too much to the old man. She just wanted to get close to him and talk about his illness. If she rashly advised him to go to the hospital for a checkup, it would be too abrupt. It might be better if they could talk more. The old man's eyes lit up. "Yes, I'm a professor in Chinese studies. I thought too much just now. I rarely come to the general hospital in the past 2 years. A young girl like you looks like a freshman at first glance. Naturally, you don't know me. I didn't judge you fairly just now. It is easy for people to make mistakes when they are old. As you said, it is not good to be arrogant. My words were not appropriate. I hope you don't mind," Jing Yunjiao said politely. "I'm not that narrow-minded." The old man smiled. "Little student, where are you going?" Screech, screech. Just as the old man asked, there was a sudden screech of brakes. Jing Yunjiao's body swayed. He looked to the front and saw that the driver seemed to be in great pain. He was sweating profusely and frantically turning the steering wheel. The people in the car were so scared that they kept screaming. Jing Yunjiao also panicked. He steadied himself and rushed forward to help. He used a great deal of strength to restrain the driver and stop the car. Only then was it over. He checked his pulse and could clearly feel that the driver's heartbeat was extremely fast. He was panting heavily. It looked like he was having a relapse, but it was more like he had been injected with drugs. He hurriedly flipped through the driver's clothes and rolled up his sleeves. Sure enough, he found a green pinhole on the driver's arm. At this time, the car had just stopped, and everyone in the car ran out in a panic. In the panic, it was likely that the person who had just injected the drug could not be found. Although there was a camera in the car, the picture might not be clear. Moreover, the other party dared to inject something so boldly, they would definitely be on guard. But why would they target a driver? Jing Yunjiao always felt a little flustered. After all, this was too sudden and even a little too coincidental. Jing Yunjiao controlled his temper and dismissed those messy thoughts. He hurriedly took out some pills from the space and stuffed them into the driver's mouth. After a while, the driver's complexion had almost recovered. However, some of the people outside had been scared out of their wits. Even if the driver recovered, they might not dare to sit in the car. Chapter 760. Jing Yunjiao was confused at this time. She didn't know who the mastermind was targeting, but if he wanted to kill her, she didn't dare to believe it. After all, she had just arrived in the capital and didn't know many people. Although there were some people she didn't want to deal with, they were just little girls like Zhou Meijun. Even if she had 10 times the courage, she wouldn't dare to joke around with the lives of a car full of people. If it was directed at someone else, then what was that ominous premonition that made her break out in a cold sweat? Jing Yunjiao put the driver down with a lot on her mind. She turned around and was about to get out of the car, but when she turned around, the old man was still there, which surprised her. "Little student, your reaction is really good. Being a police officer is more suitable than doing business," the old man suddenly said. Just now, the car was too chaotic, so he didn't dare to move. After all, he was an old man. The more panicked he was, the easier it was for him to cause problems. In addition, this little girl he met by chance was still in the car. He also wanted to see what she wanted to do, but he didn't expect her to be so strong. She clamped down on the man to prevent him from going crazy and immediately stopped the car. Later, she seemed to take out something strange and stuffed it into the driver's mouth. After a while, the driver calmed down and fainted. The whole process was exciting. He had lived for so long, and it had been a long time since he had encountered such an exciting thing. "You really know how to joke." Jing Yunjiao laughed dryly and helped the old man get out of the car. After a while, the ambulance came and took the fainted driver away. The people in the car left their phone numbers with the police and left. Jing Yunjiao was clear that even though the driver was injected with drugs, there was an 80% to 90% chance that the case would be left unsolved. There were so many people on the bus just now, the good and the bad mixed together. A lot of people could have gotten close to the driver, so the possibility of finding out was very small. After thinking carefully, Jing Yunjiao understood a little. Just now, along the way, she was standing at the entrance of the car. There were more students who had just gotten on the car, and it wasn't very crowded. So if the culprit wanted to harm her, directly injecting her would definitely be discovered immediately, but it was different for the driver. Of course, she wasn't sure whether she was the target or not. She was just guessing. It was just a pity. If the other party injected her, she would definitely knock the person unconscious on the ground at the first moment, so this false alarm could be avoided. "Little classmate, where are you going? If it's on the way, why don't we take a taxi?" the old man asked. "I want to take a look at the flower and bird market." "We're on the same bus, so it must be on the way," Jing Yunjiao said. Sure enough, the old man chuckled and nodded. "My surname is Imo." After getting into the car, the old man introduced himself. "Professor Imo, my name is Jing Yunjiao." Men with lofty ideals are weeping for the sake of the emperor. Righteously, they hang Yunjiao in broad daylight. Yunjiao, that's a good name. Professor Imo nodded and couldn't help but praise him. As expected of a professor of national studies, The first thing he opened his mouth was a poem. Jing Yunzhao had never even heard of it before. Her face was slightly embarrassed. After a while, she thought for a bit and still said, "Professor Imo, I just asked about the smell of medicinal herbs on your body. It should be just a plaster to reduce swelling, right?" "That's right. Maybe it's because I've been walking too much recently, so my ankle is a little swollen," Professor Imo replied. "Professor Imo, forgive me for being rude, but I'm afraid you'll need to see a proper doctor. I've learned some medical skills from my elders, so I can tell that you're probably suffering from liver depression. In other words, your liver's function is abnormal. At first, it was only edema in your ankle, but it's usually accompanied by spider mole, dull pain in the liver area, fatigue, loss of appetite, bloating after eating, nausea, vomiting, and other symptoms. If left untreated, the edema will spread from the bottom to the top and eventually become stubborn ascites. If it's more serious, it can affect your life." Chapter 761. Jing Yunzhao's expression was very serious. She did not look like she was joking or fooling around. Professor Imo was shocked by her, but he was not angry. Instead, he smiled and said, "Did you want to find an opportunity to tell me this when we were chatting just now?" This little classmate had maintained a distant attitude towards others since she got on the bus. She didn't look like a talkative person, but she explained the results of her observations very carefully to him. From what she was saying now, it wasn't hard to guess that what she said before was to make her words sound more credible. It was all to pave the way for things to unfold. "That's right," Jing Yunzhao nodded and admitted. She was also a little embarrassed. "Then I'm curious. Since you learned medical skills from your elders, why didn't you apply for medicine? Look at you. You're more passionate than many doctors," Professor Imo said again. Jing Yunzhao could not directly say that the teachers in this school were not as good as her medical skills and could not teach her at all. She could only say, "I've already finished my apprenticeship in Chinese medicine, so I want to learn other things to broaden my horizons." "Finished your apprenticeship?" Professor Imo was stunned. Jing Yunzhao nodded. "You're so young, but you talk big. Why don't you take a look at me and give me a prescription? I'll go to the hospital and let the doctor take a look. If you're right, I'll let this matter go. If you're wrong, I'll ask the school to transfer you to the medical department," Professor Imo said. He quite liked this little girl. She was neither servile nor overbearing, and she was brave enough. There were not many little girls like her these days. However, she was too arrogant. Jing Yunzhao was a little surprised when she heard his words. Judging from his words, he probably had some status in the school. Jing Yunzhao was not afraid of him. She accepted the challenge calmly. Then, she immediately took his pulse to confirm his condition. She took out a pen and paper from her bag and wrote a Chinese medicine prescription. However, when the prescription was in her hands, Professor Mo's eyes became a little excited. "Your handwriting." Writing depended on one's energy. Writing in a spurt of energy would be smooth and imposing. However, the physical fitness of the students nowadays was not good enough, and they were not patient enough. Even if their handwriting looked majestic in his eyes, it was just a bluff. Most of them were soft and fluffy. However, Jing Yunzhao's handwriting was different. The strength of his wrist was definitely trained. It was just that his handwriting was still a little immature. Otherwise, he would be able to become a master in the future. "Did you learn this from your elders?" Professor Imo asked immediately. Jing Yunzhao shook his head. "I'm just practicing when I have nothing to do. That was all." Professor Imo shook his head. If he hadn't put in any effort, he wouldn't have been able to write so well. His impression of Jing Yunzhao instantly improved. This calligraphy is good. It's a style of its own. Indeed, he hasn't learned it professionally. "Do you know how to paint?" Jing Yunzhao shook his head. "It's a pity that such good calligraphy complements a Chinese painting. Your handwriting is not weak. It proves that you have some skills. If you learn Chinese painting, you should have some talent. It would be a waste if you don't use your talent. As a person, you shouldn't only think about how to earn money in the future. You should learn more about the skills of your ancestors. Only then would it be meaningful, don't you think so?" Old Imo said a bunch of things out of the blue. The old man was an elder. Jing Yunzhao listened obediently and nodded. "All right then. In the future, You'll have one more class than the others. I'll teach you, Professor Imo said again. Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched. Professor Imo, little student, it's not hard for you to be my student. Before Jing Yunzhao could say anything, Professor Imo said. Hearing this name, Jing Yunzhao felt a sense of familiarity. After thinking carefully, he seemed to have some recollection. Chapter 762. When she was still in Huaning County, she often discussed the medicinal properties of medicinal herbs with Old Man Su. The old man had some understanding of her handwriting. When he first saw her handwriting, he seemed to have said that if she could learn from a famous teacher, her handwriting would definitely improve even more. She didn't take it seriously at that time. Later, Old Man Su said that he knew a famous teacher named Imo Zhangyan. Old Man Su's evaluation of Imo Zhangyan was very different. The old man was very arrogant, and there were very few people he liked. However, when he mentioned Imo Zhangyan, he said that he was a scholar who had been crazy for decades. He knew everything from astronomy to geography. If he was in ancient times, he could have been the imperial preceptor or the prime minister who assisted the country. Unfortunately, his talent was not fake, but it was also because of his talent that his life was lonely. He said that Imo Zhangyan was a little arrogant because of his talent and had always been a person with high standards. He even sighed and wondered if he was still like this now that he was old. Jing Yunzhao saw that it was not as exaggerated as the old man said. However, it made sense. After decades of exposure to wind and frost, his temper would definitely be much better. Thinking carefully, Jing Yunzhao still remembered that Old Man Su had told her about Imo Zhangyan's private affairs. At that time, she was still a little emotional, so she could remember. The old man said that when Imo Zhangyan was young, he was an outstanding person in the capital. Unfortunately, his family was poor at that time, and his level of learning was not too high. He was only a teacher in the school. However, he met a young lady of a family. Unfortunately, the young lady was the only daughter in the family and had to inherit the family business. If they wanted to be together, the man could only marry into the family. Even the child they gave birth to would be considered the woman's. Imo Zhangyan was stubborn and very traditional. Even when it came to the woman he loved, he was unwilling to compromise. In the end, he watched as the woman he loved married someone else. Not only that, after the woman married, although Imo Zhangyan felt that it was a pity, he was only depressed for a while. Soon, he was in high spirits again. However, the young lady was different. A year after the marriage, she died in childbirth. Because the eldest young lady's parents had already passed away and she had an heir, the husband naturally became the beneficiary of the family property. The so-called marrying into the family became empty words after the death of the woman, and the son took the surname of the man. 3 years later, the husband remarried, and the entire family changed hands. It had been more than 40 years since that incident. According to Elder Su, Imo Zhangyan only regretted it when he learned of the death of his beloved, but it was already too late. Since then, he had been studying calligraphy, painting, cultural relics, and history. He had never married in his entire life. The reason why she remembered so clearly was not because of Imo Zhangyan, but because of Elder Su. Old Man Su rarely talked to her about what happened in the capital, but he talked about Imo Zhangyan and the young lady in great detail. When this matter was mentioned, Old Man Su's face was filled with emotion and blame. He said that if Imo Zhangyan had been willing to lower his head back then, many things would not have happened. Seeing Old Man Su's expression, she took it to heart and committed it to memory. Now, seeing Jing Yunzhao's expression, Imo Zhangyan said, "Looking at you, you've heard of my name before?" Imo Zhangyan's name could be said to be the living signboard of a university. Not only a university, but the entire Chinese martial arts world had to respect him. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was a national treasure. Regarding this, he was still somewhat confident. "I've heard the elders in my family mention you before," Jing Yunzhao said. "You're from the capital?" Imo Zhangyan asked. "No, my elder used to be from the capital. Later, he went to the Yang province to recuperate. He's half of my pharmacology master," Jing Yunzhao replied. She was wondering if she should mention Elder Su's name to Professor Imo. Chapter 763. When Jing Yunjiao said that, Imo Zhengyin nodded and revealed an expression that said, "No wonder. Your master has good taste." Jing Yunjiao smiled and nodded. On careful thought, she decided to forget it. After all, when Old Man Su mentioned Imo Zhengyin, his expression was complicated. There was resentment, blame, and nostalgia. Besides, Imo Zhengyin and Old Man Su had not seen each other for many years. If she rashly mentioned it, it would probably make Imo Zhengyin recall the past. When that happened, it would only increase his sadness. However, since Imo Zhengyin was someone Old Man Su knew, and he had once wanted to recommend her to be a national studies teacher, she naturally wouldn't reject him. She cooperated by calling him teacher and promised that she would attend classes on time in the future. It was always good to learn another skill. The two of them stopped at the flower and bird market. Next to the market was a seed market, so there was no need for Jing Yunjiao to specially search for it. It saved time and effort. Professor Mo's destination was also here. He placed his hands behind his back and slowly walked over with his back bent. Jing Yunjiao followed behind. She saw that the old man's target was very clear. He entered a shop and looked at orchids. "This is a dendrobium orchid, right?" Jing Yunjiao pointed at a pot of flower seedlings and asked, "Your eyes are quite sharp. How did you recognize it at a glance? Could it be that your pharmacist is also interested in orchids?" Asked Professor Imo. "My master is only interested in things that can be used as medicine. The dendrobium orchid is the top of the 9 great immortal herbs, so he naturally loves it a lot," said Jing Yunjiao. She also had some dendrobium orchid in her space, but there weren't many of them. Therefore, every time she saw one, she would definitely buy it. Fangjing's space was huge, so there was enough space to store it. 9 great immortal herbs? What are the other 8? Professor Imo was also interested. Tianshan's snow lotus, 3 tails of ginseng, 120 years old fleece flower, 60 years old poria cocos, desert cistanche, deep mountain Ganoderma lucidum, seabed pearls, and caterpillar fungus. Jing Yunjiao counted them one by one. "I like orchids, but he said that I only know how to admire the appearance of orchids. I'm obsessed with their illusory integrity, but I don't even know what they're used for. I'm not a doctor, so it's fine as long as I know whether they're poisonous or not. I don't care so much." When Professor Imo said this, he looked a little angry and proud. Without guessing, Jing Yunjiao knew who he was talking about. Other than Old Man Su, there was no one else. The old man was such a person. No matter what was placed in front of him, he would first consider the medicinal properties of such things. For example, in his eyes, a blooming flower was not as beautiful as a dried medicinal herb. Even if the flower was priceless, as long as he felt that it could be used as medicine to save people, he would not hesitate to pluck it and concoct it. He and Professor Imo were 2 extremes. One was particular about integrity, while the other was only concerned about the effects. If the 2 of them met, there was a high chance that they would bicker. Jing Yunjiao's personality was much more neutral. She naturally had to study the medicinal properties, but she was calmer than Old Man Su. Jing Yunjiao picked 3 pots of dendrobium orchid. As for Professor Imo, it was unknown if it was because he thought of Su Jingji, but he put down the orchids that he had taken a liking to. The moment he walked out, he suddenly muttered, "The flowers will not bloom for long. If they can be plucked, they must be plucked." Jing Yunjiao was stunned. She looked up at the old man and saw that his eyes were flickering for some reason. She was immediately at a loss for words. Indeed, he must have thought of old matters after thinking of old people. Chapter 764. Professor Imo sighed twice and shook his head. He paced back and forth towards the flower shop at the side. There were countless flowers and bird seeds in the market, so Jing Yunjiao didn't think too much about it and started choosing carefully. Not long after, there was no space left in her hands. He bought a lot of medicinal and flower seeds. Professor Imo could not help but be surprised. Other than that, there were also small toys for Heidi. They looked exquisite and cute. Seeing that Jing Yunjiao was full of things, Professor Imo made a phone call. Not long after, a car stopped at the intersection of the market. "Didn't you say that there was something wrong with my body? You can accompany me to see the doctor. If what you said is wrong, then we'll have to go according to our agreement. Is that okay?" Professor Imo said. Jing Yunjiao nodded and followed him into the car. Jing Yunjiao thought that Professor Mo was going to a big hospital. However, when they passed by two big hospitals, Professor Mo did not stop for even a moment. Professor, didn't you say that we're going to the hospital? Jing Yunjiao could not help but ask. Hospital? The Li family's dogs have already ruined this hospital. I'm taking you to a Chinese medicine clinic. Professor Mo's face was full of contempt. As he spoke, he did not forget to roll his eyes in the direction of the big hospital. Jing Yunjiao was stunned. He felt that Professor Mo's resentment seemed to be a little deep. The Li family you're talking about, little girl, you're quite curious. However, you're a child from another city. Even if I tell you, you might not know. The Li family has a certain amount of shares in all the big hospitals. The big medical families are also in awe of the Li family. It's a pity that this was all stolen by the Li family. A son-in-law who doesn't even know how to take a pulse has been occupying a magpie's nest for so many years. His skin is getting thicker and thicker. Professor Mo's words were more for himself. His voice was very soft and his eyes were filled with anger. He looked a little childish. Jing Yunjiao felt that this was very familiar. It was almost similar to Old Man Su. When Old Man Su was drunk, he would often mention the words, a turtle dove occupying a magpie's nest. It was very strange. Through the car window, Jing Yunjiao looked at the building that was dozens of stories high. Although it was far away, he could feel its grandeur. The car sped past, and the scenery did not linger in front of Jing Yunjiao for too long. Soon, the car stopped in front of a very quaint-looking clinic. From the outside, the clinic was not small and had an elegant design. Through the glass door, one could see the heavy and tall medicine cabinets inside, as well as the medical apprentices and apprentices who were dressed formally. It was very formal. Let's go in, Professor Mo said. As soon as he entered the clinic, a medicinal fragrance wafted over. Immediately, a young medical apprentice came forward and said, Professor Mo, are you here to see Master? She's in the back hall. Let us there. Professor Mo nodded. As he spoke, he raised his foot and walked through the front and into the backyard. After walking through the long backyard path, he finally arrived at the back hall. Jing Yunjiao could not help but be a little surprised. This was Capital City, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. Almost all the nearby buildings were high-rise buildings. However, there was an unusually quaint and small building that occupied a large area here. It was indeed a little strange. This place has a history of more than 40 years. It was originally attached to the hospital next door, but it was later separated. All these years, the hospital also wanted to buy this place and raise it to the ground, but they never succeeded. Sensing Jing Yunjiao's confusion, Professor Mo was not stingy with his explanation. Jing Yunjiao nodded in surprise. At this time, he had already seen the back hall. Chapter 765. It was simple and unadorned. The windows were all open, and there were some fresh orchids in the room. The smell was not strong. As soon as he entered, he was surprised to see covered memorial tablets placed on the table. There were portraits hanging on the walls of the room. Some were old, some were more modern, but no matter what, they all felt a little strange. If it was in ancient times, this would be an ancestral hall for worshipping the ancestors. But in this day and age, such a place suddenly appeared in the middle of a busy city. It made it difficult for her to calm down. Did I scare you? Professor Mo raised his eyebrows and asked. He did not see Jing Yunjiao's expression when he was in the car just now. This is, the ancestors of the immortal Crane Hall are displayed here. The current owner of this clinic is the only successor of the immortal Crane Hall. As for the immortal Crane Hall, forget it. It's useless for a child like you to know. Professor Mo also felt a little strange. After seeing Jing Yunjiao, he could not help but say things that he should not say. This was too strange. Jing Yunjiao raised his head and looked at the memorial tablets. These memorial tablets were all covered with black cloth and looked gloomy. As for the portraits on the wall, Jing Yunjiao could not help but take a few more glances at them. There were men and women in the portraits. Some had white hair and youthful faces. Some looked like immortals. From ancient times until now, the latest one was a woman in her early 20s. The photo was black and white, and the woman's hairstyle was probably a few decades ago. She looked friendly and beautiful. One could not help but have a good impression of her at first glance. Her name is Won Yu. If she was alive, she would be someone who could be your grandmother. Professor Imo looked at the photo with a nostalgic and complicated expression. He opened his mouth and laughed. After saying that, he walked over and lit 3 joss sticks for the memorial tablets whose names could not be seen before entering the room. What a strange place. Jing Yunzhao felt as if he had transmigrated. A feeling of unreality arose spontaneously. Yu Fu. After Professor Imo entered the room, he called out to an old woman who was reading a book at the table with reading glasses. The woman was in her 50s. Her face was cold and stern. When she saw Professor Imo, her eyes were filled with disgust. Imo Zhengyan, are you still alive? The old woman asked coldly. Professor Imo sat down. He's just a bag of old bones. He should be getting old soon. The old woman did not even look him in the eye. Jing Yunzhao was a little puzzled. Old man Su said that Imo Zhengyan was a very arrogant person, but at this moment, he was like a coward. He was treated like this by the old woman, but he still had a fawning expression on his face and did not have any temper at all. It was really strange. Why are you looking for me? I remember telling you that this is not a place where you can come, the old woman said again, her voice filled with anger. This little girl said that my health is not very good, so I wanted to come and see you, Professor Imo said. The old woman snorted. Give me your hand. Professor Imo cooperated and put his wrist on the medicine pillow. Jing Yunzhao was even more confused. Didn't this old woman hate Professor Imo? Why was she so willing to treat him? The world of the older generation was really complicated. Liver depression and qi stagnation. It's not serious at the moment. I'll give you a few prescriptions. You'll be fine as long as you take them on time. The old woman's expression remained unchanged. Professor Imo retracted his hand in astonishment and glanced at Jing Yunzhao. You actually got it right, brat? Chapter 766. He only wanted to give it a try, but he did not expect Jing Yunzhao to be right about the condition. Since Wen Yu's death, Immortal Crane Hall no longer had a successor. Although Yu Fu was considered the successor, in her opinion, she was only temporarily preserving the ancestors' legacy. Moreover, she was a stubborn person, always saying that Wen Yu had never accepted her as a disciple, so she was only considered a nominal disciple. Although she had always wanted to accept a disciple for Wen Yu, who had died decades ago, Yu Fu's standards were too high, and there was no one who caught her eye. However, this Jing Yunzhao seemed to be different. If it was her, she should be able to bear the 1,000-year legacy of Immortal Crane Hall, right? Yu Fu, actually, this little girl saw that my ankle was a little swollen, so she guessed that there was something wrong with my body. Her talent is really outstanding. Do you want to keep her? Imo Zhengyan, your ambition is not small. Can anyone inherit Miss Wen Yu's legacy? If you did not care about that lousy reputation back then, she would not have ended up without descendants. The 1,000-year legacy was destroyed because of you, and the huge family changed hands because of you. You still have the face to introduce a disciple to Miss Wen Yu? You, scram. The old woman was furious, and her face was ferocious. Jing Yunzhao originally wanted to say a few words for Professor Imo, but seeing the other party's words, she did not want to help plead for leniency. A 1,000-year legacy sounded quite serious. Professor Imo, after a while, Jing Yunzhao thought for a while and said, Actually, other than my pharmacy master, I also have a master who teaches medicine. The pharmacy master was Su Jingji, and the medicine master was the ancestor, Jing He. All of her current achievements were bestowed by these 2 old men, so naturally, she would not easily change her master. Even if this old woman agreed, she would reject. Professor Imo was stunned. He did not think of this. He had let Wen Yu down, so when he knew that Jing Yunzhao had some medical skills, he lost his sense of propriety and spoke directly. It was indeed rash. He only saw that Jing Yunzhao was young, but forgot that most physicians of this age had a master, and most of the national healer faction had strict rules, so it was impossible to casually acknowledge a master. But then again, it was a pity. Jing Yunzhao had amazing observational skills and a keen sense of smell. He had good medical skills at such a young age, and even Immerse sighed. I was thinking too much just now. The old woman was a little surprised. She thought that the little girl in front of her had already prepared an excuse with Immerse. She did not expect her to suddenly say this. From the looks of it, was it just a coincidence? Did you just say that she saw through your illness? The old woman asked. Yes, exactly. Look, this is the prescription she gave me. It's exactly the same as yours. Professor Imo took out the piece of paper. The old woman took it and looked at it. Her eyes were full of shock. She stared at Jing Yunzhao and asked, Little girl, what's your name? Jing Yunzhao. Surname Jing? The old woman's hands trembled. Jing Yunzhao nodded in confusion. Immerse, did you really not do it on purpose? It was such a coincidence that he brought a girl with the surname Jing and medical skills here. If it was not premeditated, she would not believe it. You fool, if I, Immerse, was that kind of person, I would have lowered my head and married when you back then. We have interacted many times over the years, and I will repent to one you for the rest of my life until the day I die of old age. This is what when you said, and what you told me. All these years, I have been fulfilling your wishes and have never had any thoughts. I am not a member of the Li family, so you don't have to think of me like that. Chapter 767. After Professor Imo finished speaking, the room fell silent. Jing Yunzhao only felt that her head was about to explode. Today was a bit strange. At first, it was Du Rongyang who suddenly targeted her. Then, it was the strange danger on the bus. Now, she knew about the past of another family. Everything should have nothing to do with her, but they suddenly came to her door. It was too strange. It was as if a story had been arranged in advance. But now, she understood a little. The young lady from a big family that Immerse had betrayed because of his dignity should be Miss Wenyu in the photo on the wall. Of course, although she was a young lady, it was decades ago. So according to her seniority, it was okay to call her grandma. And this grandma Wenyu later married a son-in-law who moved in with his family. The son-in-law's surname was Li. That Li man eventually relied on Grandma Wenyu to become the owner of those big hospitals. The rich circle was really messy, but it was a little strange. Old man Su clearly said that Grandma Wenyu died decades ago because she gave birth to a child. He only said that the adult died, but did not say that the child died as well. How did it end up with no descendants? Immerse, you're right. You've been proud your whole life. You really can't do that kind of thing. Don't worry, as your doctor, I won't let you die. No matter what, I'll let you live a long life. The old woman said eerily. If he died, how would he repay the debt of the past? Back then, the young lady begged him, hoping that he would abandon the so-called traditional dignity and take a step back for her. But he refused no matter what. He said that a man shouldn't worry about not having a wife. He said that being a son-in-law was embarrassing the ancestors. Indeed, it was difficult for him. But back then, the young lady said very clearly that as long as the eldest son took the young lady's surname, the other children could take the Imo surname. But he felt that it was impossible. He even blamed the young lady for valuing the family too much, saying that she valued power and status more than she valued him. Those words back then made the young lady despair for a long time. He didn't care at all that the young lady had 1,000 years of inheritance, the family teachings, the ancestral teachings, and the wishes of her parents. How selfish was this man? If it weren't for him breaking her heart, the young lady wouldn't have married the son of a butler who was willing to move in with his family unconditionally. In the end, the young lady wouldn't have been robbed and taken over by that Li. Immerse's face darkened, but he seemed to be used to the old woman's attitude. He just stared at the photo on the wall for a while before he got up and left. Jing Yunzhao also prepared to leave, but after taking 2 steps, he heard the woman say, Jing Yunzhao, can you stay? I have something to ask you. Jing Yunzhao was helpless. Today was really not a good day to go out. Doctor, what's the matter? Jing Yunzhao asked. You're a student of a university, aren't you? The old lady asked. Jing Yunzhao nodded. This is the Celestial Crane Hall, a place to practice medicine and get medicine. I see that your medical skills are quite good. Can you come over and help? The old lady asked. Miss Wenyu's spirit in heaven would definitely like a girl with the surname Jing and medical skills. Jing Yunjiao was stunned. Then he heard the old lady say, "Since you know medical skills, you can take it as an extra job. If you have time, you can come over and be responsible for getting medicine. Occasionally, you can light incense for these memorial tablets. Of course, it's just incense. You don't have to clean up usually. I'll give you a salary every month." Jing Yunjiao was even more confused after hearing this. She clearly felt that the old lady's main reason for looking for her was not to get medicine, but to light incense for the latter. This was the first time she saw someone hire someone to light incense. Although she was somewhat interested in this clinic, it was too strange for someone to light incense for someone who had no relatives or friends. Naturally, she couldn't accept it. Chapter 768. Jing Yunjiao immediately shook her head and said, "Doctor, if you're just here to help me get medicine, I won't refuse. But forget about offering incense. This is an ancestral hall, and it's not suitable for outsiders like me to enter. Sorry to disturb you." After saying that, Jing Yunjiao walked away. There was a doctor in charge of diagnosing patients in the front, and the back hall was indeed a private area. Even a medicine boy could not be seen. It was obvious that if there was no special reason, no one would come here. The old woman behind was stunned. She did not expect Jing Yunjiao to reject her so decisively. After all, this little girl came with Yen. She subconsciously thought that this little girl should be someone who was instructed by Yen to be extremely obedient. But she did not expect that it was not as she thought. However, since she had rejected her, she had nothing else to say. She did not go forward to ask her to stay. At this time, Professor Imo was still waiting in the car outside. When Jing Yunjiao appeared, he drove away and returned to the school. Along the way, Professor Imo closed his eyes to rest. He was probably not feeling very well. Jing Yunjiao felt that it was okay. Although the day was a little ridiculous, she would not let her imagination run wild over such a small matter. Moreover, these things had nothing to do with her, and she did not have the mood to meddle in other people's business. "Who's that old man?" Zhou Meijun's voice came from behind before she entered the dormitory. Zhou Meijun lived in the same building as her, but it was said that she was very good at winning people's hearts. On the first day of school, she had already found out the dormitory of all her classmates and personally went to give gifts. "What does it have to do with you?" Jing Yunjiao frowned. "That 10 million yuan was given to you by that old man, right? Poor girl, you're with an old man. I feel embarrassed for you," Zhou Meijun said with a look of disdain. Jing Yunjiao shook her head. There was nothing to say to this kind of person. Her mind was full of dirty thoughts. "Jing Yunjiao, you have good grades and abilities. Why do you have to degrade yourself? Looking at you, are you planning to find a sugar daddy to help you manage some big company after you graduate? But you think too highly of yourself. This world is very realistic. Those men only fancy you because you are young and beautiful. They know very well in their hearts. No matter how considerate you are, as a newcomer, it is impossible for you to replace those qualified employees and become a senior executive. Stop dreaming," Zhou Meijun said again. Jing Yunjiao stopped in her tracks and turned around. Zhou Meijun looked a little more spirited than before. Obviously, after this class, her pride had been restored and her arrogance had returned. He and Zhou Meijun did not study the same major, but they were very close to each other. They might even bump into each other on the way to class. "Are you a blabbermouth?" Jing Yunjiao said coldly. "You were with a few men just now, right? Is that why your thoughts are so dirty?" "Zhou Meijun, I don't care what you do, but please don't hang around me with such a dirty and disgusting body. I think it stinks." "I'm dirty?" "Jing Yunjiao, you're talking about yourself, right? You have the smell of bad men's cologne on you. In addition, you have the smell of 3 different cigarettes. Your mouth is even a little red and swollen. Didn't you just have intimate contact with a man? You're not clean, but you want to bite me. What a mad dog." Jing Yunjiao said indifferently. She was sure that there were no less than 3 men in contact with Zhou Meijun, and at least one of them had a close relationship with her. Chapter 769. When Zhou Meijun heard that, a trace of panic appeared on her face. She frowned and secretly sniffed herself, but she did not feel anything wrong with her body. There was indeed a little smell, but it was very faint. Besides, didn't all cigarettes smell the same? How could she smell 3 different kinds of cigarettes? However, Jing Yunzhao was right. She was indeed with a few male friends just now. There were 5 of them. 3 of them used the same type of cigarettes, and one of them did indeed like to spray perfume. It should be a coincidence, or maybe Jing Yunzhao saw it, right? Thinking of this, Zhou Meijun felt a little uneasy. Where were you just now? Why? Are you worried that I'll peek into your messy private life? Jing Yunzhao looked at her with contempt. I was just having a small gathering with friends. You're different. You came back in an old man's car. Didn't that old man give you so many gifts? If word got out, who would be embarrassed? Besides, I've already taken a picture of it. It's your evidence. Zhou Meijun took out her phone to show off. Jing Yunzhao suddenly smiled. Is that so? Unfortunately, I won't give you money to buy a picture. My money won't be spent on a bitch. Jing Yunzhao rarely scolded people so directly, but she couldn't help but feel a lot better after saying bitch. After she finished speaking, she turned around and walked back to her dormitory with disdain. Zhou Meijun angrily waited for her back and then made a call. Jing Yunzhao returned to the dormitory for less than 5 minutes when a group of people came to the door. They were playing with Heidi with a new toy. They were shocked by the sudden appearance of the girls. Huo Tianxian directly said, "Don't you know how to knock? Don't you have any basic manners?" There were about 5 or 6 of them. They had a notebook in their hands and looked serious. Zhou Meijun was at the back. Before she said anything, she had already taken a picture with her phone. She seemed to have turned up the volume on purpose. It sounded like "Ka-ka. We're from the student union. We're here to check the hygiene of your dormitory." Zhou Meijun smiled and then said, "Pets are not allowed in the dormitory. Don't you know this rule? I'll deduct your points. Also, hand over your pet." As Zhou Meijun spoke, several other people had already broken into the dormitory and started pointing at other places. "Whose quilt is this? If you don't pass, your apartment will be deducted. The table is too messy. Also, what kind of mess is this? The desk is a place for you to study, not for you to put your beauty products. What's with the packaging on the floor? It was filthy. Oh my God. Is this still a bathroom?" Chatter on and on. Jing Yunzhao was not averse to cleaning, but it was different when Zhou Meijun brought people to do it. Yao Baobao had lost the bet with Huo Tianxian, so she was responsible for cleaning the dormitory this month. Jing Yunzhao and the other 2 also wanted to train her hands-on skills, so they did not help much. The room was indeed a bit messy, but it was too much to say that it was filthy. The packaging on the floor was made of paper. There were only 2 or 3 of them, and they were placed together. The tables were actually quite clean. There was no trash, and it was normal for the quilt to be messy at night. As for the bathroom, it was needless to say. There were a lot of skincare products in it. Moreover, Yao Baobao had just taken a shower, so there was still some steam and water stains everywhere. As the saying goes, a crime committed by force can be easily justified. Even if they explained now, no one would listen. Jing Yunzhao, what are you waiting for? Hand over your pet. Do you want more points to be deducted? Chapter 770. Zhou Meijun had a mocking smile on her face. After saying that, she went forward to grab Heidi from the table. However, as soon as she extended her hand, Heidi flew up with a flapping sound. It was only a month old and wasn't very big. However, ravens were much smarter than other birds. Sensing Zhou Meijun's malicious intent, Heidi immediately pecked at Zhou Meijun's hand. Zhou Meijun cried out in pain. Heidi circled in the air and landed on Jing Yunzhao's shoulder. Its black feathers shone with a purplish-blue light under the light, giving it a noble feeling. Its neck was high and proud, as if it despised Zhou Meijun in front of it. It's really like the person who raised the beast, Zhou Meijun said angrily. She didn't expect Jing Yunzhao's dormitory to have a pet. She just wanted to get someone to check the dormitory and deduct points. But she didn't expect to see a few people surrounding a black bird when she entered the door. This bird was playing very well with the others just now, but she didn't expect it to be so fierce towards her. She originally wanted to confiscate it and sell it or give it away, but now it seemed that it deserved to be killed. My Heidi has good taste. Be good and I'll reward you. Jing Yunjiao didn't expect Heidi to have such a strong reaction. He took out a piece of Heidi's snack and put it in its mouth. Hand it over. Jing Yunjiao, the dormitory doesn't allow pets, don't you know? Zhou Meijun said again. What if I don't hand it over? Jing Yunjiao's face was calm and his eyes were cold. Deduct points. Then you can deduct it. Jing Yunjiao smiled. I've seen many people who use a chicken feather as a token of authority. That's all you can do. Come on time every day to give me fun. It's been hard on you. She did not put Zhou Meijun in her eyes. Even now, when she saw Zhou Meijun's angry and ferocious look, she found it funny. Zhou Meijun's expression turned ugly when she heard that. She gritted her teeth and said, 20 points deducted every day for keeping a pet. That's enough for you. So the rules are set by the student union. I've learned something new. Jing Yunjiao remained unmoved. She knew the rules of this dormitory. Pets were indeed not allowed, especially those that had not been tested for hygiene and epidemic prevention. Although it was a rule, it had always been optional. Most dormitories would keep some small animals such as turtles, goldfish, and even rabbits. They did not take up space and did not affect the rest of the roommates. Even if there was a hygiene inspection, they would only remind them. As long as it was not a cat or a dog, these noisy animals would not be deducted points. Even if points were deducted, it wouldn't be done every day. Classmate, it's indeed wrong for you to have a pet. Our student union isn't targeting you. The person next to Zhou Meijun immediately said. Jing Yunjiao smiled. Since you're not targeting me, then let's search for all the pets in this dormitory and then deduct points together. Also, since I'm raising a pet, I've definitely looked up the relevant information. According to what I know, there was a senior who suggested that students can raise pets as long as their roommates don't have any objections and provide the relevant hygiene certificates, as well as guarantee that it won't affect other students' safety and rest. This suggestion was obviously approved, right? It's just that there are restrictions on keeping pets, so the rules haven't been changed, right? The other person was stunned. He didn't expect Jing Yunjiao, a freshman, to know this. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.